Welcome you all here. It is 6:15. We are opening the meeting. If you would please turn to that. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call of trustees. You want me, should I just go ahead and do that and then, okay. Trustee Davies,
Here.
trustee, Alvazo,
Here.
trustee Campbell,
Here.
trustee Sorrell. Here. And trustee Hardcastle. Here. Okay. Approval of the proposed amended agenda.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I just want to address this issue with the board before you move on this. In putting together the agenda, the posted version that went out on Friday omitted item 8B, the out-of-state travel request for the FFA National Convention in alignment with Idaho Code 74204. 4B, it has been amended and posted since yesterday, which is why the language for approval of the proposed amended agenda rather than the regular agenda for tonight.
Perfect.
Madam Chair,
Yes, please.
I do make a motion to approve the agenda for tonight.
I will second.
Okay. Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, passed. Okay, blue ribbon, R. Oh, I guess it's 3 R's.
Recognition.
R. Gotta get those R's going. Okay,
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Again, this is a concept that I brought to our last board meeting to allow the board to celebrate the positives that are happening within our school culture. And so what we would like for you to do is each take a turn recognizing a person, either individually or collectively in a group, for whatever efforts you would like to recognize them for in service of the students of the Notice community. We will document that and prepare certificates that would then go to those individuals. This links to our work at the school level with our positive behavior intervention system, and just connects you to the good that's happening in the district. So with that, I would ask that each board member recognize or pass. I guess you're allowed to pass. You don't have to, but if you'd like to recognize somebody in our community.
so we do what I said to you.
I don't know if I've read what you sent to me.
You got the ones that were from-
Sure.
Okay. I'll go first. I had a really, really good team that helped me when we were preparing the brochures to go out. All I could think of was bulletin, and that wasn't right. The brochures to go out for the bond levy election. And so that being said, I had some really good helpers, Nikki Sorrell, Megan Lowe, Johnny DeTencher, I'm leaving out somebody, Michelle Matthews. And they all pitched in, and Nikki and Megan and I were here for quite a while. One day I ran home and got bars and cheese and brought it back. And so I really, really appreciate all of their help and their work. Thank you. Anybody else?
I will pass.
Yeah, Madam Chair and members of the public, I do have 3 people I would like to recognize. And those would be the 3 people that are sitting across from our negotiating team. And I'm talking about Jess, Kayla, and Yovan. 2 of them are here today. And I just want to say there's a really positive vibe in the room. We are having difficult discussions, but we're doing it with civility, with kindness, with good faith. And I just really appreciate their attitude that they bring to the table. We're not done with negotiations yet, but we're getting there. And it's in part thanks to the excellent attitude that those three people bring into the room. And I'm really appreciative of that.
Madam Chair, if I may add, I appreciate those three ladies for being patient to put up with me and my non-knowledge of all the stuff that they're going through, that they have to go through. I do appreciate it, ladies, means the world.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I just want to say that I saw a member of our community today.
Oh, good.
And he happened to be one of the students that was in my son's class. And it was so nice to be able to see him, like he's already graduated and he's working, and I've asked about him, and he was very excited to see me, gave me a great big hug, and it was nice to be able to make that connection with alumni and some of our students.
Well, I would like to give a shout out to the FFA and all they did for the Canyon County Fair. I followed them on Facebook. It was quite nice.
Very good. That's always a fun thing, and Jeff and I didn't get there this year. Okay. Anything else? Anybody else? Okay. Board organization. Okay, consider appointment of board clerk.
Madam Chair.
Superintendent Durham.
I would ask the board to consider for approval Roseanne Coles as the clerk of the board for the remainder of the 2022 calendar year, with the appointment of the new clerk at the annual meeting in January. So just to fulfill this term.
Perfect. Okay, and then let's see.
Do we take action, Madam Chair, if I may, please?
Yes,
I see these are listed as action items. Can we just do
Yes,
action
please.
as we go along?
Yes, please.
Thank you. With that in mind, I make a motion to approve the appointment of Roseanne Coles as the clerk of the board for the remainder of this calendar year.
I second that motion.
discussion?
Anybody know how much we have in the budget remaining for that? I think we should have the full amount in there for the it's usually a $5,000 stipend, as I recall, for the board clerks. I just want to make sure that no issues there.
I can give you the exact number here in a second. It would, yes, it would be whatever the regular approved annual board clerk fee is prorated from this point to the end of the year.
And do we have any idea, since we're talking about appointing the board clerk, what other districts pay their board clerks to do this job? Is $5,000 in alignment with other districts, or do we know?
Madam Chair.
Yes.
I have not done a detailed analysis, but it is fairly standard in alignment as an additional add-on to a current full-time employee to make those duties known. They range anywhere from, it depends on the size, right? Some of the school districts that are actually hired, that is their full-time job, right? So this is more in alignment with a small district, other duties plus.
And it's been $5,000 for 3 years that I know of. When would we normally look at that and make an adjustment as we do with other positions of that type? Does that come up in a normal cycle for consideration by this board?
It will come up in my proposed classified salary
Cool.
discussion in the September board.
Right on. Thank you.
I might add,
Yes.
Madam Chairman, Dave, we paid our clerk $50 an hour in Middleton, and she worked between 5 and 10 hours a month.
Okay. So about $6,000 a year at the most. Thank you. And that was for a position that you last knew about about 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, right? In that time frame is when that was true. All right.
Okay. It has been moved and seconded to approve Roseanne Coles to finish out this calendar year as our board clerk. Matt,
Yes.
Nikki,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Dave,
Yes,
Karen, yes.
Madam Chair, point
Yes.
of order, you don't have to do a roll call vote on anything except for going executive session and water.
Oh, yay. Yay. Okay. Consider appointment of board treasurer.
Madam Chair. With the hiring of Donita Tincher as business manager for the district, I recommend that the board approve her appointment as treasurer of the board for the remainder of the 2022 calendar year.
Madam Chair,
John,
I move that we approve the appointment of Donita Teacher as the board treasurer.
I'll second that motion.
any discussion?
yes.
Dave?
Does this come with a stipend? Because we don't have anything that I know of in our approved budget for the board treasurer. It seems to me that this was always just part of the business manager's responsibility. And so my question is there a stipend associated with this role as board treasurer?
At this time, there is not, nor is there a requirement for the treasurer to be in attendance at every board meeting. So it's mostly done through the function of their office as business manager.
Have you spoken with Donita about this, Micah, to see if, why would she do this if there's no additional monies associated with it? She has a position as our business manager. This would increase her duties, would it not?
This allows her to act on your behalf, including depositing money at the bank on behalf of the district. At this point, she's just been kind of dropping things in the night drop because she is not actively representing the board.
Is that the only
As the agent.
ramifications, is she's on a signature card at the bank because of this motion, or are there additional
There are
duties?
additional duties like filling out the paperwork for the bonds and levies, issues with county assessor, anything that's required submittal from the district.
So my question again is, in fairness to Donita, should she be paid a stipend to do these extra duties?
That would be a question that the board could raise. It's not something that I can do single-handedly.
I understand. So in September, when we have that classified discussion, could we maybe talk about it then?
Sure.
Thank you.
Dr. Melcher?
Typically, Dave, I'd say the majority of the districts have that as one of the duties as a business manager. I did all the time I was there, and I know that most of the others do. If it requires a little additional time, what we usually do is say, go home early, a little bit on a Friday to compensate, but I don't think you're gonna find any districts that don't include that as part of the duties.
I just want to make sure we treat our employees with the utmost fairness.
And I'm just, giving you, for instance, that's what others do.
Yeah, I don't want anybody to assume that they have to do something if it's an additional duty.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Trustee Davies, I will, for that considerations in September, also pull the job duty description of the business manager and make sure that we cross-reference it in regard to that issue and question.
Much appreciated.
Okay, any other discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, pass. Consider resignation of a board member.
This is you.
This is me. Okay. Now if I can read this. Board of Trustees resignation. Resignation of a trustee for whatever reason must be submitted in writing to the clerk. The board shall accept the resignation at any duly covered regular or special meeting and proceed to fill the vacancy as provided by statute and board policy. Trustees retiring from the board may be recognized for their service to the district by presentation of a service plaque or other appropriate activities. And then there's a legal reference there. You want me to read that? Okay. Now, just 1 second. Karen Hardcastle, Chairperson, Notice School District 135, regarding resignation. Karen and fellow board members, I hereby resign my position on the Notice Board representing Zone 4 on the 9th of October of 2022, assuming my replacement is to be sworn in on the 10th of October 2022. If there is a delay in swearing my replacement for any reason, then I hereby resign the day before my replacement is to be sworn in. Until such time, I will continue to serve in my full capacity representing Zone 4 on the board. I ask that the position be declared vacant by the action of the school board without delay at our next regular meeting. Thank you for the opportunity to serve our community. Sincerely, Dave Davies, School Board Member, Zone 4.
One thing I'd comment on that, Madam Chairman, is that he has on there a vacancy to occur at the next regular meeting. I would not agree to that if you accept it, saying that you could do it earlier at a date you determine. Having done what the trustee has said in there would delay it a full month. Waiting until the next meeting to declare it.
But we would open it tomorrow, so it wouldn't be delayed.
Right, rather than doing what that said in the last sentence. I think the inclination was that declaring it at the next meeting. You declare it tonight, open it tomorrow. If that makes sense.
What do you think, Michael? Not sure.
Yeah, Madam Chair,
Yes,
the statement specifically that Dr. Dosher is referencing in the letter, Dave just says, I ask that the position be declared vacant by action of the school board without delay at our next regular meeting. This was dated July 27th, which means that this is our next.
This is our next
This is
regular.
right.
So
right.
And it's on the agenda for
I
tonight.
think that clarity, looking specifically at the date of submission, that it should be noticed that this is our next regular meeting in accordance to that, so we are within the same timeline.
And that's fine too.
And this was checked out and to make sure that we were doing it legally and all that, and yes, we are. So, is there any discussion on this before we go forward? Anybody want to say anything?
Yes, I would like to say that I'm disappointed to hear that, to find that out. I believe that trustee Davies asks very important questions, and it helps with clarity, and we talk about clarity, and so I'm very disappointed to say that.
Thank you for saying that.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve the resignation?
Madam Chair,
John?
I move that we approve the resignation of Board Member Davies. And can I want to declare his Zone 4 vacant?
That's
I vote.
That's a
Separate
separate.
motion.
Okay, so I will move that we accept Board Member Davies' resignation for Zone 4.
Do I have a second? Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No,
Nay.
nay, I couldn't remember. Sorry.
Okay. Yes, one, no. All right, no, is that one of these? Okay.
No, it would be under E.
Okay.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I move that we declare Zone 4 vacant.
I second that.
Discussion? Is It's been moved and seconded to consider, to declare the vacancy for Zone 4. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain or? Aye, yes. Okay, thank you. Okay. Consider timeline for appointing trustee for Zone 4. All right, let me get my little calendar here. Oh, and okay, you follow with that one. Okay, so, Roseanne, will you post it on the website?
One of us will.
Okay, so this will be posted on the website tomorrow. It will go out to, for everybody to see. Anybody that you know of that lives in Zone 4, feel free to talk to them about the position. And, wait a minute.
Let's get used to her device.
So it will be posted tomorrow, the 9th of August. The closing of applications will be August 23rd. We will survey the applications to make sure they're all registered voters, and the things that we have to check on that, on August 24th. And unless we have a conflict, board members, I'd like to set interviews for the 26th at 3. Okay, and that's
Friday
Friday,
afternoon.
Friday, on the 26th. And as soon as we get the applications in and go through them, the applicants will be notified of this, the rest of this timeline, as to when we're gonna do the interviews and that. Okay, and then, and 3. And then on September the 12th, at the regular meeting, we will appoint the new trustee. And on October 10th, we will swear the new trustee for Zone 4, and that person will sit up here with the rest of us for the remainder of that meeting, and therefore,
Madam Chair,
yes,
what date did you say interviews?
on the 26th, which is a Friday of August, at 3, here. So, and that will be posted, so, anybody can come and listen as they did before. Any questions? Okay. Do we need a vote on that or anything? Or
Just
just
approval
ask?
of that time.
Okay, so I need an approval of the timeline that we just went through.
That works for me.
It's a motion.
Madam Chair, I move that we go with the timeline that you recommended, 23rd, 24th, and 26th.
Okay,
I'll second
okay, any discussion on that? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Now, in this process, Dave, as a trustee now, is not eligible or cannot participate in selecting the new trustee coming in. And so we will juggle that with him when we're doing that part of a meeting, then you will have to step out during that portion.
Or just abstain from
Just
any of
abstain.
the discussions.
Okay, sorry, abstain.
Yeah, I'm still a member of the public, right?
And you just,
Yeah,
for conflict of
just-
interest, you'd have to abstain from vote.
Okay,
yeah.
understood.
I just knew that they told me, no, you can't do that, and so then I.
But in all
followed
other,
that.
in all other capacities, it's my intention to continue to serve the taxpayers by sitting
Right.
here until that
Right.
swearing in happens.
Got it. Nikki?
Yeah, I'm just looking at the agenda on here online, and it says August 29th to do the interviews, so I want to make sure that you said the 26th.
Madam Chair.
Oh, yes,
Yeah, the notes listed on the agenda were a proposed initial. That is not the timeline that was outlined by Chairman Kessler. So,
okay. All right, consent agenda,
Madam Chair,
Superintendent.
I would just like to note for the board in advance of consideration of the consent agenda that there are still a couple of outstanding meetings that we're still working on finalizing minutes for.
Okay.
And so the regular board meeting for June and the regular board meeting for July, we plan to bring in September. But they were rather extensive meetings on YouTube, so it takes a lot of playback time to generate those. So. And I also just wanted to point out that we did go back and include the April 11th minutes that had been previously noted as not been included.
Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Trustee Davies?
Before we move to approve the consent agenda, I would like to ask 3 very brief questions about 3 different things in the consent agenda, but I don't want to pull them out for discussion. They're just quick questions. I'd like to have permission to do that. If I may. Is that acceptable?
Yes.
Thank you. I notice on the finance part, the finance statements, Micah, we're using a couple of credit cards for different uses, and that's fine. You know, people need credit cards for different reasons, and they're legitimate. But I noticed that there are finance charges that are showing up in the finance statement, and what that's telling me is we're not paying those credit cards off in a short time frame, and we're letting them roll to that next month. So can I just have you put that on your tickler list to see if we can nip that in the bud and avoid some of those finance charges?
In all hope, those will be the last finance charges you ever see.
Boom, that's what I'm hoping for. Thank you. I do notice also with your principal hat on now, that something very different is going to happen this school year with the 6th graders. And that is, they're going to spend part of their day on that side of the street and part of their day on this side of the street. Or did I misunderstand that correct? It looked like some of their classes were going to happen over in this building, and I don't think that's ever happened before. Kind of a middle school type format there, and I think that's noteworthy. If I understood that correctly.
That is something I can discuss during my principal report, which is no longer part of the consent agenda.
Okay, thank you. We'll move that to there, and I appreciate it. Under your superintendent report is outside of that as well. Okay, so that is, and the elementary student handbook is outside of that, and so is the walking path. So that's it for my consent agenda comments for tonight.
Perfect. Okay, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
And I will second that.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Public participation. Rodney,
Yes, ma'am.
do you care to speak?
Yeah, thank you for allowing
Welcome.
me to speak here a little bit. I just have a question on this August 30th levy vote. Is that gonna happen on August 30th? And I hear rumors, I just like to know what's going on.
Okay, we're gonna be bringing that up in the agenda here in a little bit.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? That's the only paper I had turned in. Okay. Information items and reports, council minutes,
I'm sure.
Superintendent Durangus.
As previously discussed, both on the board prior to my coming on as superintendent and in the last meeting, it's our intent to provide the full notice board with just kind of brief update through report format of what is happening at CASA. So for this month, I've included their board meeting minutes and their special meeting minutes. CASA is a service agency. believe everybody in the crowd is aware of it, just, to again, for families that may be paying attention remotely tonight, that we pay discretionary funds from district dollars for CTE services, career technical services, and for our special education services. As a district of record in shared resources with them, we do carry some of the full-time equivalency for their staffing on our state reporting, as well as that's how we pay for some of a portion of that is through our salary-based apportionment from the state. CASA as a whole is a rough place to be right now. I'm glad I'm sitting at this table at this point and not at that table as I was last year. There are some impacts currently around staffing for notice for next year. And then we also did just get an indication that there may be an ask of the participating districts in CASA for a significant increase in our pay after budgets have been set, as they look to try and compete with local school districts for classified employees. And so we received that notice about 2.5 hours ago.
Yeah.
Nice.
We, Trustee Baldazzo is the board representative for notice. He's the voting board member for notice on that board. The monthly meeting for CASA is next Monday. And likely we will be bringing some information back from that meeting in September regarding classified salaries and its potential impact on the Noda School District. I'd stand for any questions on the CASA minutes or discussion.
So I just want to make sure I'm getting this right, and I'm going to use my teacher voice for a minute. So what you're saying is we're going to pay more than we're currently paying to CASA every month, or for the in our budget, right? And that's for classified staff?
Currently, at this point, we pay a shade over, I couldn't give you the exact dollar amount right now, a shade over $300,000 a year. A significant portion of that, about 2/3 of that is for special education. CASA currently, as a service agency, has, I believe, around 8 teaching positions vacant at this point, including a teaching position here in Notice. And they have roughly about 25 to 30 classified openings across the consortium. One of those is here in Notice. And so the CASA board did vote to increase the salary scale for classified employees May, June, somewhere in there.
No, I think it was April.
Yeah, last spring. But they are having a hard time maintaining classified employees as people are, even with retention bonuses, everyone has been paid or promised the pay of $1,000 retention bonus to return to CASA this year. They lost an employee, classified employee that worked at CASA for over a decade to a local school district that's paying $3 an hour more for the same job experience.
And so, but that's not certified.
That is not certified. They have not brought forth a certified salary scale regarding their teaching staff at this point.
Because here at Notice, I know that we needed 2 certified. I would rather see us pay for an additional certified versus
We
an additional
we
class.
currently are allotted. We are currently allotted 1.5 instructional staff with a half-time school psychologist, pupil services as well with that. So we actually carry 2.0 FTE on our books out of our salary-based apportionment to cover those positions. Yes, Dave.
One comment to Nikki and then one question to you. If on the superintendent's report this month, we're not looking for any certified positions for this district. There's none being sought at this point.
Right, this would be the CASA. This was CASA.
I want to make that point. The Notice School District is not looking for certified positions currently.
until my report later.
It is in your report. Yeah, that's what I referenced your report to. That, and now my question or my comment has to do with, once a year, CASA comes to us and says, here are the numbers. And they're non-negotiable. And it's because we have representation on their board, and those numbers are formulated through a formula that has long since been hammered out. And just out of that spins two numbers, actually, that show up in our budget. And they end up being $380,000, over $250,000 every year that we pay to CASA. And we get those numbers and we can't do anything about it, and we're thankful for CASA because they're a good value. And we put those numbers in our budget and we move on. Now, are you telling me that they want to, in an interim step, have another, either, is it an ask or a demand for additional monies from the Notice School District outside of that normal annual cycle? Is there going to be another ask or a demand for additional monies for these, whatever other needs that they have?
Yes, we're anticipating a formal ask with actual foundation analysis behind it, which we were not provided at the meeting earlier this afternoon. And so the discussion will be how much that ask is collectively. The number they threw out in our meeting today was $182,000 to be shared amongst the 6 LEAs. Discussion whether that's an even sixth split or if it's based on our prorated share of our funding. And so I did voice in the meeting that as one of the smaller districts, that's an even sixth split is not even for us.
Yeah.
And so that's to be determined, to be discussed at the next CASA board meeting. I imagine that no action will take place on that at that board meeting, and it will come back here in September.
So let's just say for discussion purposes, Micah, that we get a letter from CASA or communication from them saying, notice, you need to give us an extra $20,000. That'd be a little less than a sixth. $20,000, $15,000. Is it optional for us to say yes or no to that? Or do we know at this point? Do they have any way to say you have to pay it? Or is it we would like you to pay it? I'd like to get a read on what that means.
I do not believe that they can insist upon that ask without the CASA board approving it, which the CASA board, again, is made up of representatives of the 5 districts. So if the 5 representatives on that board team voted for that to be they can't even officially ask until that's been voted on, I guess.
Let's say it passes with a majority vote in their boardroom. Does that now become a demand to us?
It would become a demand that then would likely be contested and go through opinion of council discussion as to the validity of that additional claim outside of the typical budgeting cycle.
And my hunch is if it's somehow denied or shut down, the next cycle, it'll just be rolled into that, would be my guess, Karen. They'll just make sure that the one that we can't do anything about will just be that much larger, perhaps. I'm just talking out loud.
Realistically, and I can share this because I worked for CASA last year as a special ed director, which is where a significant part of this increase is coming from. This has been an issue that has been pushed down the road for the last 3 or 4 years. The year before I took over there, they made $0 increase ask of the districts, even though increases went up. And this year, I was not allowed to ask for more than $3 per student increase in that special education budget, knowing that even at that point, they were making the increase in the classified salary schedule that was going to significantly impact the carry forward and reserve dollars for special education within the organization. So it's not something that should have been a surprise. It's just now being brought as a surprise.
Madam Chair, so what does that do? Like, we've already budgeted for this year, so we just have to general fund it again?
That will be a long discussion like we had in September as to the impact along with potential ramifications and or suggestions and solutions from me as to where that money may come from.
Okay, and then I have a question for my fellow trustee. John, what would be the possibility of saying, you know, we would rather have another certified position versus a classified position? Because I can tell you, as having had that position, we really need, and with the potential growth coming, we really need two certified teachers, one at the elementary and one at the junior, senior high school.
I don't know if they have that ability to require another certified, where they can, because of the number of students, request more classified staff. Am I correct?
So at what point would that be?
In the annual budgeting hearing, they can ask for whatever they ask, just like we would of our constituents as well. And so one of the things that I was working towards when I left to take this job was a framework for caseload and what caseload equivalency meant for staffing based on funding. Current K-12 special ed population in Notice is right about 36 students, which is less, I think, than you had when you were here. And there are other districts where the caseload management is up to 48 for a single case manager at the high school level in Homedale. And so depending on the severity of need for the students, depending on the amount of high need students from behavioral standpoint, caseloads range anywhere from 8 or 9 all the way up to 40. So we could make that ask.
It makes sense. When I was here, it was like 52, 53 was my case.
Yeah, it's significantly less than that now. Any other questions on the concept?
Thanks for the heads up.
Okay, excuse me, student organization report, FFA?
The kids have the night off tonight, but we're just gonna really quickly, you had it in your board package, but pass those around. Yes.
Oops.
There's some things I wanted to summarize real quickly on scholarships from last spring. The seniors there, Cody Askew got a $2,000 through the FFA Foundation scholarship through our connection with the Wheaton Foundation. That's the second year in a row that Notice has gotten that. I wanted to highlight that. It's also the second year in a row that we received, she got the $1,000 for the Idaho Irrigation Equipment Association. Emma Sanford got that last year. You'll also recognize in there a whole host of those kiddos that got a $1,000 alumni, the Notice Alumni Chapter scholarship because of the great work that the alumni does with their auction. So some really good scholarship monies that have been coming out for those kiddos. Also wanted to highlight, put Emma Sanford there, even though she's been out for a year, because the Meridian Dairy Days Committee made her $1,000 that she got last year. They made it renewable for 4 years. So
very
that was a real nice, nice deal for her. And so, any questions on scholarships? It's nice to see some kids get some good money and they're going to put it to good use. Speaking of Emma, we've got American Degree. We received, she's notification from the National Board of Directors meeting from July. She's going to be awarded that American Degree. That'll be at the next national convention, which will be late October in Indianapolis. And just out of curiosity, I went back in the archives and looked on the records that comes from the state. So if there's, this is subject to fine editing and approval if anybody has something else that's different from this, but this came out of the state. But I went in and listed the names of the individuals that have received the American Degree, the highest degree that we can give. And so Emma's going to be the 5th in Notice history. So we're real proud of her for that. Candy County Fair had a really nice showing down there. It was fun to have all the beef kids there with all their new show equipment. Made it so much easier for those kiddos. We had 9 students showing, 13 combination of breeding in. We had some market beef projects. Court Smith did a real nice job. Kind of had to explain to them what it was to be in the championship drive that night. It's like, well, it means your steer was in the top 6 calls. So that's pretty good to be in there. And he had a nice Hereford calf that was just purchased from the neighbor at just under $1,000. And all the other 5 in there were fancy, very high dollar, high price club calves. So it was nice to have that quality. had goat showman with a couple of goats and a lamb, so we hope to increase those numbers for next year. It's a great way to start out.
We actually had 2 goat showmen.
2 goat showman?
Yeah.
And we had the Snake River Stampede calf scramble. So if you are familiar with Snake River Stampede, we have the opportunity to go out and those kids, they send in an application and they go out and they get selected, they go out and tackle a calf and get it across the finish line. And so we had a couple of kiddos do that. So Cole Askew, and he got his across. Ian Hill didn't quite make it, but they give out 2 or 3 sportsmanship awards. So he got one of those. So they're both going to be picking out they get $1,000 gift certificate to go get a breeding heifer. And then, so they'll go buy that. We've got them lined up and then they'll go and show that at the rodeo next year. So I've got the pictures on the back and it was a fun opportunity that's great. Kids down there. Starting in September, we get school started, get our officers all put together. We'll have assignments made for next year, or next month for each. So you can just.
Oh, we like hearing you too. Thank you very much.
Bet.
Thanks, Deb.
Okay. Elementary principal report.
Madam Chair. Want to note for the board that in the interest of community health, we went ahead and kicked the AC back on. So it's a little louder in the back of the room. So I've been asked to remind us all that I'm the biggest low talker of us all. So can you hear me okay, Megan?
Yep.
Okay. So again, not intending to go through everything specifically, kind of point by point in the report, but just wanted to include some updated enrollment numbers for the elementary and talk about staffing. As of today, I believe our kindergarten class is sitting at 28 or 29 students, and so we are intending to hire an overflow aide for kindergarten classroom. If that number continues to climb too much above 30, we are likely going to have to look at adding a kindergarten teacher and or think creatively about a combined K-1 class. But other than that, we are fully staffed from a certified position. We do have a handful of classified vacancies at this point, which are fine. We'll be okay as we're getting some applications for that. Trustee Davies, as you indicated earlier, the change around 6th grade. Yes, there are some changes here. The intent is to make sure that we honor the fact that in notice 6th grade is still elementary. And so there will likely be coming discussions as to whether 6th grade remains in the elementary building or transitions to the secondary building. That will come with community partnership, conversations with parents and students around middle school philosophy, around health and safety. However, given our current staffing footprint, it was necessary for us to utilize teachers with 612 core content certifications. So those 6th graders will actually, the teachers will transition to the elementary building to start the school year to teach science and math. We also are working to provide an opportunity for them to have an exploratory in, we're shifting our keyboarding to 6th grade as well as an opportunity for ag science at the 6th grade level. And so we're actually able to hopefully provide a little bit more opportunities for them. Again, as we work through the school year and as we look at projecting growth in the district, there will be a discussion at some point. It's just a matter of how soon or not, whether 6th grade remains at the elementary level, whether we conceptualize a middle school philosophy. There are a lot of feelings on all sides of that issue. And so as we were looking to have to make these staffing changes, I really wanted to honor that we have not had those conversations with parents, and therefore that's why the kids are yet. And that's why the kids will be remaining for their core instruction in the elementary building this time.
For all of their instruction or just for their core instruction? Will the sixth graders be coming across the street for any part of their instruction in the fall?
If there is a field trip to the science lab for a lab experiment, possibly, but on a daily routine basis, no.
Thank you. Yeah, good. I like it.
That's in my superintendent's report. That's it for my elementary report. We'll stand for any additional questions.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. Grant coordinator report.
This is all new to me. I appreciate having an opportunity to share. So I'm sure that I listed out our new grant applications. So Mr. Barker has applied for the Idaho Division of Career Tech Education. So we'll know about that at the end of August. So that will help expand and modernize our building and our ag shop. We will also know about our 2C Kids Succeed. So we had 2C Kids phase 1 application. That's where we partner with Caldwell School District, Amherst School District, and YCAP. And Notice was lucky enough to be part of that. So we applied for that funding, and that helps us fund our preschool program and our early literacy efforts. Idaho Food Bank, I was notified this week that we did not qualify for this because we are not a 501(c), but I have another avenue to hopefully purchase that upright freezer for the food bank. And then grants, some new grants that we received, as you can see, those are listed. And then I'm still exploring, hopefully expanding the playground at the elementary level, and then upgrading the library selection up here at the secondary level. Oh yeah, another great one is Kara Marchbanks, our community schools coordinator. She was part-time, and now she is full-time. And so that funding is coming from the United Way of Treasure Valley. Super excited, so now she'll be able to, I was teasing her, she probably has been full-time, but just the amount of work that she puts in. So I'm glad that we were lucky enough to have that. And that's a three-year grant that will be a step down, and we'll create a sustainability plan for her for that role to keep that intact. So I'm excited. Oh yeah. So we are still, initially last fall, I think I briefly mentioned this in one of my reports about working with consortium, the federal level grant for the 5 districts in the consortium along with CASA Academy to apply for a federal grant, 5-year grant, similar to 21st Century. You know how we have that a 5-year grant. United Way of Treasure Valley was originally going to spearhead that, but it's shifting over to, looks like, the Blue Cross Foundation is going to help support that, and we're going to apply same funding, same team of us. It might expand out to the rural and through the state as well. So I'm excited about that opportunity. More to come, and we'll apply for that in September, which is right around the corner. Mr. Davis?
Jen, congratulations on these 2 awards here for $45,000. Do you know, are those reflected in our current budget, or would those be outside of our current budget? And will we need to somehow track them
Yeah.
in a way that's unusual?
So fortunately, Donita is all about creating budget line items with all the grants, and then we'll have expenses and revenue to show line by line. So I'm excited to see the opportunity come to notice.
Good. Yeah, like keep track of it.
So with the grant funders.
Yeah.
And the outcome report, which is, yeah, I have to submit those, absolutely. Perfect.
Anything else? Okay, federal programs director.
All right.
Here we go.
I just wanted to show appreciation to Donita, reviewing the budgets with the federal funds. We're going through line by line as last year and creating a plan for this upcoming year. And then also as things shift into the fall, just really working with our current staff and those Title I and Title IV, all of our title funds, so just making sure we have a plan in place to keep the good work coming. And so there's also some policy changes that I'll be working with the superintendent on, making sure our students are supported in that as well. So,
Madam Chair.
Yes.
It should also be noted that our federal dollars through all our title programs and our CSFGA is down. And it's based on enrollment from year to year, and it tends to trail behind. So we did see I couldn't tell you the exact percentage, but we did see a decrease in our title funds for this coming budget year. That we will not see movement on that again until this time next year, regardless of how many students are in our district.
Hang on tight.
Hey, did you receive your night principal report?
Yeah, this was a new one for me. So our enrollment did change a little bit. We do have 3 new in-district students for 7th grade, so that would be a total of 4. And another change would be 9th grade and just open enrollment instead of 1, that would be 3. And so we're enrolling new students every day. We have a family that stops in and wants to be part of our community, so that's exciting. I also want to share that a new perk for Notice is an application for the VA. So students that apply that can receive Chapter 35 benefits. I'm working with that office to get that application in, and then there's several documents along with our board policy, course catalog, our student handbook to show our accreditation. And so that is in the works and everything's been uploaded. So I'm waiting for the application. So students that turn 18 while they're in here can receive funding through Chapter 35 to help get that, support them with their transition to what's next after graduation. So that's been, yeah. Yes. And hopefully you can meet us at our homecoming games. Put that on your calendar, October 8th.
I'd just like to make a comment, Jen. I'm happy to see this safety line item here regarding exterior doors. I hope that's policed and maintained. It's going to be a pain,
But necessary.
but necessary.
Absolutely. We talked
So
about it
thank you
tonight.
for that.
Thank you. Thank you for your time tonight.
Okay, superintendent's report?
Madam Chair, thank you. Just a couple highlights out of my report. Again, there's quite a bit of information in detail there. Several, the table at the beginning of the enrollment was reported last month. No changes there, just because it's historical data. But as of probably last Wednesday, we have 315 students K through 12 enrolled at Notice. We will continue to monitor that. I'm not certain how many of these new enrollments that are reflected even in our building principal reports have actually made it into our school yet when I pulled the report. So that number may fluctuate even still. It's not atypical, again, as school starts to start, that we have families that forget that school starts until the week school starts. Yeah, we're up to 3, that includes preschool. So 321-ish, I think, where we're at. Yeah. So we're still trending upwards. It's worth noting at this point, the comment that I included around the funding of education since COVID has happened has been transitioned to an enrollment-based philosophy from the state level, which means that we get funded per student that is enrolled in our district. Legislative code actually outlines this, the districts get paid on average daily attendance on the ADA for the first period and for the best 28 weeks, as you see in the previous scale there. Districts have been collecting that same data through COVID. They just haven't had to worry about it. This last year, there was a bill that passed both houses of the state legislature to fund education based on enrollment. And the entire educational world was shocked when Governor Little vetoed it. They were not expecting him to veto that. And 3 days later, the State Board of Education authorized a temporary rule to keep districts solvent, basically, because their budgets had already been created for the fiscal year, to keep that at enrollment based. So the apportionment from the legislature included enrollment based funding, but the governor vetoed the authority to do so. That temporary rule does expire in April with the legislative session. It's likely to be a hot topic during this legislative session as to whether or not they will relook at the entire funding formula, how they will fund based on enrollment versus ADA. And then likely there may be an additional temporary rule to go from April through the end of the fiscal year to keep districts whole, and then starting the next budget the next year based on the ADA. So as we start talking about enrollment and funding and notice, it's important to note that it's something that we've got to keep in mind on attendance, because that's how ultimately we truly do get funded based on kids in seats at school. Trustee Davis.
And Micah, you're right. This enrollment is so important to us, and we, as you know, are negotiating with teachers based on the idea that we're going to be funded at 19.65 midterm support units in that allocation formula. Now, if enrollment continues to climb, we're at 319 now. My question is, could we be funded at more support units than 19.65?
Yes.
And that determination will be made at the end of September? Is that when that's sewn up?
We likely will not know that until the February payment.
Yep. Okay, but as enrollment changes, those support units change, and that means more state money if it goes higher.
Correct. The timeline is typically by October 1, I think, based on the enrollment. So the enrollment numbers between now and October 1 are kind of the most critical component as it impacts state funding for this school.
That 19.65 number is a number that we self-generated on the worksheet given to us by the state.
Correct.
Can we rerun that worksheet with our latest enrollment numbers to see if it is going up from 19.65 to get the most current understanding of state funding as we attempt to complete negotiations?
The quick answer is yes, we can.
Okay.
My caution in doing so is it may still be premature because those students have not shown up yet. So there is fairly typical 2 to 3% of students who never show up to school, who even though they're enrolled during the summer months, are no longer enrolled when school starts. So I caution about doing that for another week or two until we know who actually comes out of the woodwork to attend school.
Well,
So yes, I can, but at this point, I'm not certain that it's not wasted effort.
all right. Well, latest and greatest would be helpful with our negotiations, so we have the best numbers available to us.
I did include in the chart there by funding unit groups so that you can see, because each of those funding groups get funded at different per pupil expenditures. So if the negotiations team wanted to crunch some numbers on their own, they can do that. Again, if I have the capacity with starting school next week, I will attempt to do so, but I'm not going to be able to get you that for weeks yet. Staffing again indicated here, has previously been communicated that to make the budget work for FY23, there were 2 certified teaching positions that were absorbed upon retirement or resignation. We since have had an additional 1.67 staff come retire or resign. And so we're at this point kind of keeping those and holding those in reserve. So currently notice employees, we have 21.33 certified staff. That's instructional and pupil services staff. Again, we carry approximately 2 FTEs in the special ed department for CASA, as well as 1.3-ish in the CTE realm. The reason that I point that out is that, yes, we do get CASA levy funds to offset the CASA balance, but it does not cover our full share to CASA. And so when we look at the 21.33 number, compared to the allotment on the salary-based apportionment worksheet for those 19.59 things, it's also important to realize that that 21.33 also does not include approximately 3 additional certified staff that are counted against us that we pay out of discretionary fund.
That we pay out of that $380,000 that I referred to earlier.
Correct.
Yes.
Current openings, yeah, I think those are all still right. +1. So again, we don't have any current certified openings in district. Paraprofessionals to be determined. We're still making some adjustments within our current staff for transfer. We are in need of an additional 1, if not 1.5 food service employee. And we're always looking for bus drivers. So we're looking for full-time route drivers. We are looking for activity drivers. We are looking for substitute drivers. So anybody who's capable and wants to get a CDL and be put on our call in case of an emergency list, let me know. So
How many bus drivers do you have?
we have 2 drivers. At this point, and then our transportation supervisor should obtain his CDL license later this week, all things considered. I did meet with him today. This is not included in the report, so I might as well include it here. Currently, within our transportation pool, we only have 3 active buses, which means we have 2 buses we use for routes and 1 in reserve. We should be closer to 5 active buses and 1 in reserve. And so he and I will be working on a maintenance plan to bring those buses into service. A note on CASA staffing. Again, we were notified last Wednesday that our special ed teacher K-12 resigned. Many of you know Mr. Kirby. Yes, it's late. Yes, I grit my teeth at that, but I wish him the best in his future endeavors. We will be working very closely with CASA from the building administrative perspective to ensure that those students have services. And we do that.
Do you have is there a classified person here in the high school?
So we currently, for classified staff, with CASA, we currently have an opening for our preschool aide. That's the only classified staff position we have open for CASA. We have a temporary substitute SLP, Mackenzie Engel or Mackenzie Dowdy, who's served the Notice community for quite a while, is off on maternity leave. And we wish her and her family the very best with that. She'll be out until November. And then again, I was asked earlier, even before I officially started, to take a look at the clause within the master agreement for SY 21-22 regarding the total state support. I've included my analysis here in the documentation to support that the district state revenue did not meet the threshold for that clause and outlined it there. Committee makeup, again, we'll talk about board committees here in a little bit, and then I'll start working with staff on getting those positions filled with staff representatives. Any questions to date to that point before I go into the facilities maintenance update?
I got one.
Yeah.
Good. How about the other district kids, Micah? Have those been accepted? Are there still some waiting? Any applications still in process?
We have processed all of the out of district applications that we received as of last week. I don't know if we've received any in the interim. We do have a wait list in kindergarten and preschool at this point. We have a lot of kindergarten and preschool out of districts that want to come to Notice. But again, as I stated earlier, our kindergarten enrollment right now is at 28, which includes about 4 out of district that were approved before the number got that big. But we have roughly 4 or 5 additional kindergarten students, as well as other preschool students. It's again important to recognize that from a funding perspective, kindergarten funding unit is a 40-to-1 ratio, because it's fully funded, but it's not. They give us discretionary funds to make up the difference, but they don't fund us based on our enrollment. And then preschool is completely out of pocket or grant funded.
Any idea of the numbers out of district you accepted and revoked?
I believe we revoked, or we did not revoke any. We denied two. They chose not to come. We did not have to deny them.
How many total accepted?
Oh, gosh,
It's in those lists.
Approximately.
New,
Total.
Jen will work on that in the background.
The thing I'd like to make a comment on Dave's question about the number of FTEs supported, which is 19.6 in CURS. I kept that amount of number that was computed based on, I think we got our 19.6 from spring.
At 297 students.
For a couple reasons. One is, you said October 1, usually by the 15th of October, the state departments run enrollment pretty thorough, but the other factor that can be negative is they also run once a full out. And during the February payment, if you get collected more or you compute higher and your enrollment goes down, then they can subtract out for your last payments as well, which is something that's kind of a shocker. So I recommend, from my past experience, probably safe thing is try to stick with that 19.6, because that was in black and white when we finished, rather than projected now. And as you say, Micah, they're coming and going, but that October date is the safety net, saying at this point, this is how many you have, but I would lose some in Middleton come December-ish, January too. And so that's why I never want that higher amount, even though we're gaining 250. I could have easily bumped that out, but from the safety standpoint, I lost it.
The way
Harvest.
the way that the state payments come is based on that, and we were cautioned again at our superintendent meetings last week that if you over project on that number, they will withhold that money in your payment. So, like, there were districts last year that they got their initial payment and then they didn't see money again from the state until February. So.
I would like to make a comment about the fact that to my fellow trustees, we are not looking for a single teacher right now. And this is good news. There are so many districts that are looking for certified, and they're throughout the state and throughout the nation. This is a chronic problem, attracting teachers, enough teachers to teach. But here, on this superintendent's report, we're not looking actively for any teachers, and it's
Yeah,
August. I
yes.
think that's good news.
We're not looking for one, but the SPED teacher is still considered a teacher here at Noda School District, so we're still looking for that teacher.
CASA is still looking for a teacher to place here, but the
We're not looking.
Noda School District is not looking, and I think that's good news.
About 300 openings, Dave, as of Friday.
That's what I read.
I will acknowledge this, that I do think that part of that is credit to previous administration, in the sense that through COVID for the last 2 or 3 years, leading a district with declining enrollment is a very difficult challenge, and especially when personnel is involved and you have people on staff. And so the board and previous administration had gone to great lengths to ensure that the current level of staffing was maintained in order to keep staff whole, in order to keep kind of student programs whole. The declining enrollment and the change in funding and discussions around that have necessitated the current place where we're at. If I were to be hiring for the 1.67 positions that we're holding in reserve for budget reasons, we would be looking for a full-time counselor and a part-time teacher. I'm going to skip over the old gym for a minute. I'm going to go to the walking path and the weights pathway. Again, these were indicated previously last month. We have this scheduled, ready to go as early as the second week of September, pending board approval tonight. The implementation of a walking path around the playground at the elementary, approximately 6 feet wide, 8 feet wide.
I think we said 6.
6 feet wide, about a quarter mile in a loop. And so Ms. Wright has secured $15,000 in funding. 3 years ago, that funding was secured.
It's still there.
But that project has not been done. Had it been moved forward earlier than that, the entire project would have been covered by the $15,000, but the cost of asphalt has increased. And so we're asking to expend just over $4,000 of plant facilities funds to make that come into reality, and also utilize it in recognition of Miss Illy Long and her longtime service to the Notice School community, intending to dedicate that facility to her for her efforts over the last 30 plus years for the Notice community. Questions about the walking path?
Location of the walking path. I heard you say around the playground. When I was on the facilities committee, we talked about this and we thought it would be out in the front of the property where those large trees are. Apparently the location has moved. What is the rationale for placing it there versus there?
Student
On that
supervision, pure and simple student supervision. In order to keep an eye on students during playground. There are other adults out there, multiple adults at a time. If it were placed out in the triangle on the other side of the street here, it would have to be an intentional staff member going to that location, have students crossing the parking lot at where the buses drive in order to access it, and then utilizing it for our elementary wellness program as well.
And yet it's not strictly for students, it's also for the public. And this is an opportunity for us to extend an invitation to the taxpayers to come onto our property and exercise in this way. So what if any, a sign or something to invite them to the back of the property or I'm concerned about that connection with the community here.
It's a delicate balance, having worked in school facilities for a long time. Oftentimes, in previous districts where I've worked, the community's understanding of when they're allowed to use a shared path often conflicts with the school's use of that facility. And so I think that we can do some work to make sure that we communicate signage in order for them to know when it's available for community use after hours. I found out today it's really hard to get through the fire lane to get back there without climbing over the thing. So we'll have to put that signage on the south end of the elementary building. But again, it's not atypical for our community to use our playground after hours as well. And so it's there. We would ask that our community be good stewards of that facility, particularly around bringing your dogs to marshal your pet.
Yeah, it's typical where I would see the public use like a football track, you see that in other schools too, where they're invited after hours and I just want to consider that dimension of this.
Yeah, I think it, as being in the back of the school, we have a fence back there currently, and I think it's, the duty teachers are more able to watch the kids. And then if it was out on a triangle, I don't think that they would get to use it, we just wouldn't have enough bodies to watch out there, so.
So there'll be a gate in the fence, so a
Yeah.
member of the public can walk back there and use it,
The
right?
fence is solely a perimeter fence, so there is
Yeah.
no gate between the community and that.
You
Good.
can walk right between the building and the weight room,
Sure,
right where the
sure.
garden is, right there.
Thank you.
I might add, Micah, we did a walking path at Purple Sage. It was in the far back of the school. We posted signs and the patrons that live along the golf course were the ones interested, saying that it was open at certain hours or they could check in with the principal and become volunteer monitors. And a lot of them did that. They'd walk with the kids, but never had any problem whatsoever. And there were probably 900 people in that area that could easily use it, and it worked like a charm for those people, and they really enjoyed it. Early morning before school started, they were out there, and after school and on weekends, and as Dave said, it was a nice public opportunity for those people to get on and use, and They respected the, on the signage there, it did say about dogs too, or pets that have to be kept up after, but, that was a nice addition for those people out there to get that track.
I will also say that in order for us to get the 1/4 mile length out of that path, it's also utilizing the fire lane and the playground blacktop that's already out there. If we were to just put a ring out in front out here, it would have been closer to 1/7 to 1/8 of a mile, would have been a much smaller distance. So again, encourage our kids to get active, be active, stay active, and then still available for community after hours. Along the same line is the Waits pathway. I don't know if you've been back there, but it seems like that's where old doormats go to die to keep the kids out of the mud. There's probably I haven't dug down there, Matt, but I wouldn't be surprised by 2 inches worth of rubber mats that have been stacked over there over the years. But while we had the team out, working on this, we did propose to just ensure that the safety of our students walking to and from the Wait facility, ensure staff walking to and from our community pantry and our bus barn, that we put in an active path there. And again, that project is just shy of $8,000. And so we'll be asking for action on those items later. I want to give a brief update on the old gym, and partly because it's a fairly involved update. I met with Design West and Benetton late last week on Friday. It appears as though, this was news to me, being new to the project, that this has been an ongoing discussion since December as to involving those 2 agencies into proposals for what it might take to repair or replace that facility. They were able to come with a plan. And so taped up over here is the outline of the proposed renovations to not just the old gym, but also to the cafeteria. At some point, discussions with the plant facilities or the facilities and maintenance committee led to a discussion about an expansion of the cafeteria and kitchen. And so that is included there. The price tag that they gave me 2 options. One was to renovate the facility, and one was to demolish and rebuild the facility with a donated building that has been previously stated from RM Steel. The average of those 2 is $3.1 million. So one version was 3.2, one version was 3.0. That includes both the old gymnasium project, the expansion of the kitchen project, and then with any construction project, a pretty significant charge in, for contingencies and general contracting components as well that come along with that. So I know previously there have been a lot of discussions as to, do we have enough in plant facilities money to bring that gym back open? The answer is no, we do not. And so this will become a much bigger discussion around growth in our district, needed facility upgrades, likely, potentially long-term looking at what do we do from a building facilities standpoint. In order to get $3.2 million, we'd be talking about a bond to our local community, which would need to be analyzed in regards to its effective use and its impact on projected growth in the community. Again, we're anticipating here shortly approval from the city for roughly 150 to 200 homes in the subdivision in town, with another pending subdivision down here on Purple Sage. So growth is headed our way. It's just a matter of how far and how long do we act on that. So questions regarding that, Dave?
The old gym was red tagged by the building official in December.
Correct.
It was red tagged because some ceiling tiles were coming loose. Occasionally, maybe one of them would fall. He could smell maybe mold. He was told there may or may not be asbestos, and there was some sort of leak in the building. That's what needs to be addressed to get the red tag off the building, so that we can continue to use it. Now, that's not $3.1 million. I realize that's two projects. Did Design West or Benetton talk about the bare minimum to get the building open and usable for students in the interim before we do other improvements to the building? And I would like to think that gluing some ceiling tiles, repairing a roof, to do a little patch to get that tech. And has anybody, you, Design West or Benetton, entered into a discussion with the building official who placed the red tag on the building to negotiate with them about what it'll take to remove it?
That's a good question, because it was, again, the first time that I've had any interaction directly with anybody on this team was Friday. So getting some background from them as to the work that they were done. They did not specifically articulate a schedule as to the bare minimum work that would be necessary to remove the red tag. They did give me some indication that there was some discussion as to whether or not we had a copy of the conditions of the red tag, and so that's on my list to dig into to locate it. So that
I have a copy right here.
so that we can address that.
Give it to you after.
They did talk about the cause. Let's see if I can find another check sheet here. Regarding, it's not the vents per se, it's the overflow drains in the roof were aftermarket slide-in function that is known to fail. And so that's what was utilized the last time that it was, the gym was serviced. So they did not specifically address that, nor do I believe that they were asked to do that. The discussion that I had was very clearly, it was offered gratis to the district. Very clearly, we've previously been your contractor, we'd like to solicit your business in the future. And so we will look at some of those things. So there's still a lot of work to be done and to dig into the minimum that it will take to make that facility usable again. I do think that it's worth noting that we will be moving the after-school program for the elementary kids into the elementary building for this coming school year. So, we do have a designated space for those kids in those programs. But it's still an unusable space at this time.
Madam Chair, who gave you permission to just say anything about the cafeteria? Like, we're talking about repairing some tiles, not having expanding our kitchen and whatever else.
Came up by a member of the community. The road coming into our community, the amount of kids that we can have in our lunchroom currently with the group, we won't be able to support those students in a timely manner.
Right, but that doesn't,
They originally wanted to possibly incorporate the lunchroom to the new, if we chose to do a new building, possibly incorporating the lunchroom into that new building.
I'm of a mind where, why don't we fix something first before, and as a taxpayer, I'm thinking that, why can't we fix the old the old gym first before we go into 3.1 million into something else? Yes, we're going to have growth. Do we have it right now? No.
Madam Chair, just, they did provide a breakdown, and again, this is just the cost of estimated costs. The costs are rising. This is not to be considered a bid, this is just an estimated cost. Just alone for the work to be done in the old gym was about 1.6 million.
What kind of work are we
To
trying to
renovate. Again, that's to fully bring it up to code, to do some additional tie-ins that they articulated on the, I don't know construction language, but it includes a $50,000 allowance for asbestos abatement, HVAC upgrades, so we get rid of the propane heaters, significant. So I will continue to work with the Plant Facilities Committee on getting a minimum number of what it will take to make it accessible. responsibly, in the sense that I want to make sure that as a district, we are not throwing good money after bad. And so that's also very important, you know, that it looks like a bomb went off in there right now. It looks like a bomb went off in there right now. The ceiling tiles are falling to the floor, obvious water damage on the wood floor. So at this point, regardless of what it looked like in December, it's a considerable amount more work necessary. So, but I will continue to work with the facilities committee and keep the board apprised of efforts moving forward. And with that, with my report.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate all the work that you're doing. I know it's been a busy day.
Sorry, I got talking to the corner. I'll talk that way.
Okay. Old business action items, consider revoking resolution for the August levy.
Sure. Madam Chair.
Yes.
Board members have been notified of this. It has been shared with some community members, but this is the first opportunity to share in a public forum. We were contacted by the elections office that they did not receive the necessary paperwork in order to put our resolution onto the August ballot. And so the work before us tonight is to consider a revocation of that resolution for the August levy. And then pending future discussion as to the appropriate time and place in which to run the plant facilities levy and the CASA levy in the future. I do think that it's important to highlight for the community that there were some costs associated with this error, most of which has been remedied. There was the cost of Piper Sandler and their fee, which is part of a 3-year agreement. So it was paid and paid for the next little while anyway. Roughly about $700 worth of legal fees and roughly $600 worth of postage, which we have received a donation of $600 worth of postage back to the district to make up for the work that the committee did on mailing out those brochures. And so recommendation at this point is to recommend revoking the resolution for the August levy.
Madam Chair,
John?
I move that we revoke the resolution for the August levy.
Do I hear a second? I second the motion. Any discussion?
Are you saying that the total cost to create and send out the trifold brochures to each one of the patrons in the district was $600?
Correct. Postage. There was some photocopy expense at roughly 0.3 of a penny per, I don't know what our copy machine rate is.
Yeah. How many went out by mail?
Nearly 600.
Yeah, there was, well, we figured postage was how much?
60 cents?
Well,
60 cents and 600 of them went out?
my math might be off.
Yeah.
600?
600 postage stamps times 58 cents,
60 cents.
60 cents. And we have received 600 postage stamps in donation in return. So there's a zero balance cost on postage
On
for
postage.
the district.
Okay. That's music to my ears. Why is it the election office was not notified?
I would have to defer to Madam Chairman for that, I'm sorry.
Okay, that's all right. It was my fault. The paperwork that we got just at the end of June is when Michelle left. And there were some things that she was going to be taking care of for us, and she didn't receive it. So it was not sent.
Well, are we talking about, Madam Chair, the special paperwork that Matt and I and you approved at a special board meeting on the 30th of June?
Correct.
So that was Michelle's last day. She was gone on the 30th of June. I think that was her last day, was it not?
Technically.
Okay,
She had still indicated to the district that she would be assisting with board clerk duties
Right.
behind the scenes, including updating minutes through the month into July to assist with the transition. So the expectation from the district perspective was that she would be assisting with that. Again, this transition, as has been previously stated, with lack of a board clerk, lack of a business manager, there are a lot of conditions that led to an error. That's solely what it is. Paperwork, the paperwork called for a board clerk signature. There was no formal board clerk in place. Paperwork got put into a file and it did not get processed.
so in lieu of a board clerk, somebody else could have signed it, or was it possible for us to have an election without a board clerk?
I think the discussion comes down to who the appropriate person could have been, and that did not get answered.
Okay. And my question to Rich, you're our levy specialist. We pay you $75 an hour to give us advice. Where were you when we needed to get this down to the elections office? Were you helping behind the scenes here, or what was happening there?
Madam Chair.
Dr. Usher?
Dave, I understand you're looking for answers.
I sure am.
I spoke with the county elections office. The point of contact for all of the conversation regarding this levy was the former employee who is no longer employed here. So all of the reminders about deadlines, all of the, hey, we've heard that you're doing this, make sure you get us this by this date, went to an email that was not actively being monitored. So again, there's a systems issue at fault here, not a people issue.
Yeah. From my point of view, being a board member, though, this is embarrassing. Right?
But we're humans.
We are human.
All of us, we're all humans. And we're all trying to do the best that we can do.
Yeah, sure enough.
And so really, I do believe it was a simple, honest mistake. And again, Superintendent has said, that email was not monitored. That's very important right there. If it's not monitored, I do a lot of things to get email. So if it's not monitored, then there's nothing we can do about it.
So I guess to answer your question, Dave, I was in the same position as you as board members. I advised you that the election should occur. I was here when it was approved. I did everything I could possibly do, so it's an honest mistake that was made. The paperwork was not submitted. So it isn't that it's the last straw that broke the camel's back. Elections happen.
Yeah.
Honest errors happen. I look at the idea of March and say, maybe a blessing in disguise for a couple reasons. One is, I've said to you guys, we need a prioritized list of planned items. We did not have that when this election would occur. Therefore, as I said, we were asking patrons to sign a blank check and set it until we got some hard numbers and prioritize items. We will have that by March. Secondly, I think it gives us more of an opportunity to distribute and visit with the community out there that we didn't have based on August because we started late. The March date is the 14th, the deadline is January, and so, I'm going to recommend that if the board desires to rerun this, and the nice thing is you have March, May, August to use those dates because they're not due until 23, so that can occur. But I think, as Sharon tried to do, carrying so much of the load, that happens, and I don't think she should be thrown under the bus for something that she felt she was doing. And I think March, we can jump back and make it work.
Rich, I do have a question, and about my calls and everything that we the trifold that we did and we sent out, can we still go by that? Is that information still going to be the same? Or will we have to redo any of the information that we put on there?
I think, Nikki, we can do that at minimal, a little bit of time for you to remodel. What I'd like to recommend the board do is to have a section here saying, here's expenditures for that plant that they know about, prioritize the gym, whether it be X amount. That's typical, and I mentioned to you guys 2 or 3 times prior saying that we were missing, but I'd say within 30 minutes, we can remodel that brochure. There's dates in there that has to change, elections, when we vote, but very minimal. When election fails, it isn't any different from what we're doing now that we didn't run. You know, they run the same brochure, just updating it. So the time to, and I think putting it the way it was in that brochure that you helped, Nikki, was well done. And it should be very minimal amount of redoing it to make that a viable piece again.
Let's go to the second.
Okay, we have a first and a second on revoking the resolution for the August voting. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, one thing I wanted to let you know is, when we went into the contract with 5%, or thank you. We paid the amount of money on, well, we entered the contract with them on May the 9th, and it's good for a year. So, as long as we, run this, bond and levy prior to that time, I don't think we're gonna have to pay any more as far as that's concerned. Well, I shouldn't say any more, minimal amount in order to get this process done.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
If I may, will we need to repay the lawyer to rewrite up a new resolution at a cost of, was that $700?
Yeah, I think it is $700 an hour, and that's something that we'll have to.
It's a one-time fixed fee of $700 for an updated resolution.
we expended $680 on legal specifically to write the resolution,
Yeah.
which is roughly the equivalent of about 1.5 hours of their billable time.
Yes.
A little follow-up. Eric is something that is a valuable resource. I talked to Donita tonight about as she's preparing bond funds and expenditures in her budget process now. Part of what Eric's service is to work with her. I told her, I said, more I'm glad that we paid the first year of Eric's fee through May to have him and her work together on everything you have now, because you're paying on a bond, your interest rates, and those sort of things. From a two-teaming approach would be much more, inclined to do a good job. But Eric did tell me, I was with him last week, that he's good until May. So March being prior, that $2,200 that you paid him maintains. Stephanie said, as you mentioned, Nikki, about the brochure, her time to redo that brochure is going to be half the amount that it would take. So she estimated about $350 to do it there. But Eric's, and when it comes to time 2 on this thing, if it passes, I think that your business manager's time with Eric to consider even another year, and that's entirely up to you guys, but will be beneficial, especially if I can get her and him teaming together now, which will help Micah too, but he has a huge, as you guys know, he presented huge amount of savvy of finance, and he'll help the school district and Donita make that transition a lot better than her trying to learn it herself. So that's, I just wanted you to know that I did have that conversation with her tonight about introducing her to Eric and using the existing year of expertise right now with her as she went along. But again, his 2,200 is covered in the March selection and about half of the return.
So, one other question about that, are we still, because we were, the taxes for our taxpayers would have went down, are we still gonna be able to do that?
Yes.
So that's the, yeah.
And I'm gonna recommend you look at, try to keep that level at a lower amount if you can do it. I don't know about the costs that Micah brought up about that gym, how that entails, but on the same token, the first year of where we were gonna go at the lower amount is what they're gonna advertise for on the L2. And then in March, I'm gonna recommend you keep it at that same amount if you can.
Okay. Bye. Take care. Okay, new business action items, consider revision of policy 3380, extracurricular and co-curricular participation.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
At this point, I would defer to Ms. Wright as the high school principal. If she would like to take this, or defer to Mr. Barker or Ms. Hernandez as the FFA representative.
Am I up? Can't hear you back here.
We yield our time, Mr. Barker.
Yield time. National Convention's a great opportunity for kids. I've taken kids for a long time. Been back when there was in Kansas City and then again in Louisville. Looked to take about 6 to 8 kids. We looked at taking seniors who've never been and trickle down to juniors, like making an annual event. The nice thing is, since the alumni board has
Sorry.
made it a standard practice that they do 70%, which kid pays 30% in their food. Be 3 days out of school. It's the last week of October. My style of travel with kids on this, just after a lot of years of doing it, you get the convention really nice and big and hard in the beginning of the day till about 1 o'clock. A lot of sessions, a lot of things for kids to do and see there. Usually about 45 to 50,000 people from all over the country in attendance. And then get kids out of there, go back, change clothes, and go on tours. Go down to Louisville, down to Louisville, you get to see Churchill Downs, Louisville Slugger Bat Factory. There's a really cool kind of down a back alley that's kind of neat where you go in. They have a, well, not that kind of back alley.
Sure.
They've got a really cool art glass blowing where they make like big crystal balls and Christmas ornaments, and it's just a really artisan place. Very neat for kids to see that. Then go back up to Indianapolis. It's about a 2-hour drive. Go down to Louisville for a day. A lot of cool tours to do around Kentucky and Indianapolis. So, request permission for approval of the board. If there's any questions, I'll be back to
Madam Chair.
What?
I move that we approve the FFA's national convention out of state travel.
I second that.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Madam Chair, I apologize for the confusion. I skipped-
okay.
I skipped item A. You read it correctly.
I was like looking at you like,
Okay, we'll go back to A now, and that is policy 3380.
No. Yeah, sorry.
Madam Chair, As had previously been communicated by members of the school community, there had been a committee, a team, I'll say a team, because it was not a board committee, convened last fall to discuss athletic eligibility and its impact with student activities, specifically to ensure that our system was working with kids and not purely a punitive approach. And so the culmination of that is this proposed policy 3380 and the additional 3380P, which is the participation procedure that outlines kind of in a graphic format our intent to hold students accountable for their academic progress at the high school, junior high, and high school level, but also allow them to work within a collaborative approach with teachers, with parents, to ensure that they're able to maintain skills and what's the word I'm looking for? Conditioning through being able to participate in practice, even if they may not be able to participate in the game. I want to highlight the Woodlands and the Lowe's, Ms. Miller, Ms. Peterson, and Dr. Lynch previously with Noda School District for his efforts in bringing this for your consideration tonight. So I would recommend approval of these policies 3380 and 3380B.
Madam Chair,
John?
I move that we approve policy 3380 and 3380E.
I second that.
Any discussion?
Big thank you to that Blue Ribbon Committee.
Yes.
Yes.
This was a sticky wicket and they made it through.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Maybe Joe can get some sleep.
Okay, consider,
Thank you.
consider approval of CASA partial FTE MOA.
Madam Chair. Again, CASA is a service agency that provides our career technical and our special education services through a memorandum of agreement. There have been a lot of questions raised from the State Department regarding funding and allocation of funding based on state statute. Party animal. And necessitating an additional MOA specifically around shared staffing that we carry in our IC data and our IC uploads. So in order to qualify for funding, there is a box that must be checked that states that this employee has a contract with the district. It is CASA's assertion and mine as well, and many of the CASA board, that the MOA itself should meet that requirement. The State Board of Education disagrees. And so we worked, CASA has worked with legal counsel in order to create an additional MOA specifically around partial FTE contracts that specifically articulates that we, yes, we report them. Yes, there is a contract in place with their consortium, and that CASA maintains all rights and responsibilities for evaluation and contract status with that employee. Yes, Trustee Davis.
I think this has come before us, at least in some form before. My only question is, has Amy, our attorney, Amy White, has she reviewed this and does she approve of this?
Amy White wrote this.
That's all I wanted to hear.
Yes.
Thank you.
I believe that this was brought out to the boards January, February of last year. However, it was
Yes.
never needed to be enacted because at that point,
Yep.
we were able to leverage the fact that we had the MOA, but it did come up again. And so we're just making sure that we do our due diligence to maintain our relationship with CASA. So I would recommend that we approve the partial FTE MOA as presented.
And each of the member districts doing the same thing like that?
Yes, they are. And it is a standard MOA for all districts.
Madam Chair.
John?
I move that we approve the CASA partial FTE MOA.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Consider framework for district strategic plan.
Madam Chair, with the knowledge that this topic may take a little bit of discussion and we've been going for nearly 2 hours, I'd like to ask for a 5-minute recess so I can use the little boys' room.
Got it.
Thank you.
What was that?
Video.
That was funny.
I was trying to like do this, look. So next time we sit at the tables, I want to be right here. Yeah. Words are for. So we have policy and then we have different paragraphs. The red words.
I hit my arrow too.
Congratulations.
Good chance to stand up and stretch.
I'm gonna go there just to make sure it's not.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Definitely not what I was aiming for, but we'll make it work.
Well, if you'd have told me that, I made a motion to the opposite. You didn't want it.
I'm up for a challenge. This is gonna be it.
Okay. I know. You'll get into the flow of it. I mean, it'll just pretty much be like some of these things, like elections, the little extra stuff.
None of the student schedules.
Don't fall asleep at the switch.
Sure.
Otherwise, I think you'll get it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep, I have lots of helpers. That'll be good.
Yeah, and I see that here, by and large, people really are very cooperative, a lot of collaboration.
Yes.
That's
Yeah, process inquiries.
Yes.
In the advisory for Kendall. What time is it?
So much of the work goes for making 65 degrees. And then you drive up and over the new burn. Humidity, like 70% humidity and 105 degrees. And nobody has air conditioners.
Chris and I looked at it. So what I didn't do was go back into our training trip policy and see if
Yeah.
It's my favorite, but the longer the day goes, the more I have to go. If I were actually drinking water like it should be, it's even worse. When I fly anymore, I don't drink until I land. Anything.
She said, so when I dropped him off here. Whatever, so he's there.
That was funny.
Okay, it's ready to go. Everybody? All in place.
D. Madam Chair.
Yes.
I included for discussion with the board tonight, the proposed framework, specifically revolving around strategic planning. And wanted to kind of walk through that a little bit and have a quick discussion with you about the document that I provided. My perspective on the need for a strategic plan and how it ties to all other planning and moving forward from that prospect. So I think that it's important to recognize and understand that there is often a misconception that the continuous improvement plan that is required by the state is a strategic plan for a district. And yes, it is a significant component of strategic planning, but in my estimation as superintendent, it does not include all avenues that a board should be looking at regarding the strategic planning of the entire district. It definitely focuses on school environment, school culture, academics, but it neglects to include financial operations, facility operations, and some of those other things. So I've prepared a document for you, just kind of outlining it. I hope that there was a time to kind of look through it. It includes several kind of breakdowns of some of the language used in a strategic plan. Strategic plans are typically a 5-year scope. And from that scope that the board articulates what their vision and objectives are for the district, at that point, alignment can take place, including superintendent goals, other administrative goals, even down to teacher goals, as to how they tie through the continuous improvement plan and the broader district goals. And so I've provided, again, the framework there, articulating everything from standards down to commitment statements, outcomes, objectives. I did not have time to create a visual representation of what this might look like, but it's typically kind of in a table format that has multiple columns that kind of articulate back. The intended goal is to clearly articulate what it is that the board would like to see be the areas of focus, and also what metrics they would like to see utilized to measure for your own evaluation as a board, for my evaluation as a superintendent, in my goal setting, and also just the continuous improvement plan. It is our desire as an administrative team at the district to take the continuous improvement planning process to make it an active and ongoing discussion. We want to make sure that it's tied to something other than just we pull data once a year and submit it to meet a deadline by October 1, and then we don't really come back to it functionally. And so I have included in this document some recommended standards. Again, somewhere between 5 and 7 standards are fairly typical of districts. To guide the work, I've included 6 based on my conversations with you as board members, both collectively and in sidebar conversations. I haven't had a chance to meet yet with all of you one-on-one, but those 6, for those in the audience, high quality instruction, learning, and engagement, safe and supportive school, transparent communication, community partnership and engagement, recruiting, retaining, and developing all staff, and resource stewardship. Both that would include financial and also the resources of time and capacity of our staff. And so I'd just like to engage in discussion with you as a board in regards to either questions regarding the framework, thoughts and concepts around what standards you would like to see. At the point in which the board can articulate these standards, I would ask that we schedule a work session either as a whole board or as a steering committee of a partial board to kind of flesh out some of this into a broader scope for further review in a public setting. So I'll stand for discussion or questions. Trustee Davis.
Yes. I'm glad to hear you reference in there the continuous improvement plan. My hope is that we wouldn't be duplicating efforts, but that whatever we're doing here with this strategic plan and these recommended standards, would they be, I guess here's my first question, would that be in addition to what's in the continuous improvement plan? That's my first question. And my second question is, where does this document come in, which Dr. Bauscher drew up for us, which is our 10 years facility plan? Certainly this should also be rolled into whatever 5-year strategic plan we have. And I don't see facilities on your list there, and maybe they shouldn't be because we have this standalone document. So I guess 2 questions there come to mind.
Yeah, so no, those are good questions. And again, the strategic plan is meant to be kind of an umbrella framework, right? To outline the work, or if you think about it from a building perspective, the foundation upon which those other things are built. So if we were to look at an adoption of a standard around high quality instruction, learning, and engagement, the continuous improvement plan will be a central part of that component within the plan. And
Fitting under that
So it's not duplicating those, it's tying those to a broader framework to where it can actually be something that we collect metrics on and actively work towards and report both internally and at the board level with the community. Right.
But we're collecting metrics on the continuous improvement plan already. It's built on metrics.
Correct.
So then there's additional metrics with this strategic plan that we would be adding to that to look at and pay attention to?
If you look at the sense of, we've got a standard of, for example, high quality instruction, learning, and engagement, you would identify 2 or 3 outcomes, things that you would want to ensure, right? Your commitment statement. And then your objective would be 2 to 4 objectives within that umbrella. One of those objectives likely will be develop a continuous improvement plan to monitor the things that we do in that. But there realistically would be an additional 1 to 3 other outcomes and objectives that we would be looking at within that realm of high quality instruction, learning, and engagement. Resource stewardship, again, would include buildings, plant facility, finances, time. So if you think about it from and we'll get to the discussion about committees here shortly, plant facilities committee, calendar committee, those would typically fall under the umbrella of a resource stewardship standard, right? Because we're monitoring our time, our effort, our finances, our facilities.
I have a question. So I'm trying to wrap my head around this. Is this an outline for how we're going to run the school district?
Yes, essentially.
Okay, and then everything that like the stuff that Dave was talking about and everything that we do will be within that. And so basically we have a procedure manual on how to run the school district.
I wouldn't necessarily say a procedure manual, but you would have a map, right? And the reason for it being kind of a 5-year plan and outlining is that personnel and people change. And to ensure the long-term stability of a district, it's important to ensure that there's a common mission, vision, values that guide the work. So as administration comes and goes, or board members come and go, community enters, that we can clearly articulate it as a district. This is what we stand for. This is what we value. This is what we're monitoring. Because what we monitor and what we measure is shows improvement.
And
right?
then
And if we're not, then it just is kind of a hidden. This is intended to bring transparency.
So is that like a way that you, also all the district's staff, let's see, certified staff can be evaluated on IPLP?
Tied to, if you think about it from that sense, thank you, Trustee Sorrell for other board members, like there are very clear articulations around individualized professional learning plans for certificated staff, right? That are typically tied to building goals, which are typically tied to the continuous improvement plan, right? This allows for other staff that may or may not fit in that umbrella, and or, for example, myself as a superintendent. For me to clearly know and meet your goals as a board, it's very important to me that I know what the metrics are that I will be measured against, right? For my transportation department, for my food service department, for my safety and security team, for us to be able to look at all of that collectively so that we can bring visibility, transparency, and most of all, I think accountability to that process so that we're not missing at a moving target, right? I want to make sure that as a district, we're clear on the work that we're doing so that we don't have pockets or individuals that are working towards what they think is important, but it is not what is important as communicated through the board, through community work, through working with the staff in the development of this plan. Building a strategic plan is not me just sitting down on a weekend and typing out a bunch of things for submission. It includes stakeholder engagement, it includes community feedback, teachers, other staff members throughout the whole process because it impacts everyone in that sense. And it starts ultimately with identifying what are our core values as a community and as a board. What do we really believe about our work with kids in the Notice community?
So I can see this more as just a work day. I mean, I can see this as something more than that. More, I mean, that's not a time.
No, it's not. No, this likely will be a culmination of a year's worth of work before we fully adopt the strategic plan. But it will also assist in our conversations later, specifically around superintendent goals. What you would like to see me around helps provide at least a basic framework that we can hang some things on so that I know what I'm working towards to meet your goals.
I'm picking up what you're laying down.
All right. Consider approval of board committees, guidelines, and procedures for school year 22-23.
Madam Chair.
Okay.
I took a document previously adopted by the board and work originally, I believe, from Dr. Boucher with previous board on articulating the board level committees outlined in notice policy and put it in a little bit of a different framework. Everything is very similar. What I would ask us to do tonight is to identify who the board representative for each of those committees are. And then if possible, I know that this might not be possible to clearly give it at this point, but if possible, outline the board directive for that committee to clearly charge them with what their task is, what the board would like to see them do over the scope of the next year, what they would like to set the priorities for, that the board is setting those and directing the committees and our work on the committees rather than the committee sitting and thinking about what they think that they might want with representation of all stakeholders, but then coming back and it not be in alignment with the board as a whole. So that's what I would ask that we do at this time is to articulate and identify board representatives for each committee, as well as, if possible, the directives for the coming school year.
Okay, so start with curriculum. I really feel that Nikki should be on curriculum.
So currently the schedule for the curriculum meeting is every other month prior to regular board meetings. I was not sure as if that meant like 5 o'clock on the Monday of the board meeting,
No,
or
I was thinking that it was like we've been doing it. We've been doing it just like a week prior or something like that.
Not the day of.
week prior.
Yeah, not the day of.
And Trustee Sorrell, I know that you've passionately spoken on the desire to do financial analysis towards sustainability. Is that the directive you would like to see the board push this committee in doing the work for this year?
No, for curriculum, I just want to make sure that we are adopting or like staying in line with the state curriculum schedule.
Options good.
What's
Options good.
options? schedule?
Adoption.
Adoption schedule, yes. That's our main goal. And so far, so good. Our social studies and,
Science
no, we just did social studies.
Math and health.
and health.
Okay, next is the calendar. Again, the duties outlined are to meet, receive, share input on the current calendar, create calendars for the next 3 years. Upcoming year should have 2 options and 2 other future years, 1 option to be approved as a tentative draft version. Again, this intent is to be forward thinking about when the first day of school, the last day of school, holidays, but also the instructional hours in meeting the state requirements for credits, etc. Scheduled monthly, November through April, to present to the board in May for action. I believe, Karen, this was your committee previously.
Actually, it was prior to this last year. Matt was on
I
it
assumed that role
when he came on.
when I came on.
But that's fine, I can do that, that's fine. Okay.
I'm good with it either way. I'm just trying to push the meeting on.
So who's gonna do it?
Flip a coin.
I can do it.
Okay. And is there any directive from the board that they would specifically like the calendar committee to look at in the generation of future calendars?
I would like for them to look at the other 4 consortium schools involved with CASA, because we end up having too many different days off. I know it doesn't always work, and I know it's not always possible, and I just don't know if that's something that they're doing right.
I would also like to see the committee listen to the teachers and the staff and make sure that they're listening to them when adopting dates. Does that make sense?
And again, I will reiterate, as part of this committee process, staff are numbers, and so we'll work to make sure that we have staff representation on those.
Like I told the board at the time I helped set those committees up that the calendar procedure that I used was a 3-year calendar. The one they adopt, 2 a tentative one, and then 3 a future to look at. And I don't think Notice has used that approach, but it sure worked well for Middleton. Idaho High School Activities used that when I was on that board for them too, just as a thought process down the road, because it helps parents know the second year before it's adopted when you're planning on things, and it makes a much smoother transition for the board to know that it works or it hasn't worked. So
And it helps with athletic planning and
Oh, yeah.
everything else, just to know.
I just throw that out for consideration, whether it be 3 or 2. I think multiple one is beneficial.
Continuous improvement plan meets to assist in the developing of the plan and helps ensure that the district is following the applicable federal and state laws under 2 major categories: accountability and guiding quality improvement on an annual basis. Plan is due to the Office of the State Board of Education by October 1st. Mid-year review and update should be presented to the board in February. Summative analysis and report should be presented to the board at the meeting following the final availability of relevant data from the SDE. So that meaning that some of our metrics that we use, we don't get until June or July. So the final report on previous year's continuous improvement plan will come as possible.
That's the one that I was on this last year, and I never been in the meeting, so I never attended.
Would you like to represent it again?
If you're doing that, then somebody else needs to count.
There are 5 committees and 4 eligible board members to represent on committees. The schedule is slated every other month during the school year. This is a good opportunity for me to remind the board that based on board policy, and I believe the guidelines here, maybe it's just the guidelines, might not be board policy, don't quote me on that. That the chairperson of the committee should not be the board member. And so we will work to, as I develop the teams, as Jen and I look at dividing those out, identifying and articulating key components to chair those, to ensure accountability and reporting back to the board at large. Is there anything specific the board would like to see regarding the continuous improvement plan? It should be noted, and this might be part of this work, that the guidelines, expectations from the state board have changed. They no longer require reporting on college and career readiness as part of the continuous improvement plan. If it is something that the board would like us to continue to work towards identifying, how do we engage our students, not just in college readiness, but in career readiness and workplace readiness, we can articulate that here in the board directive.
That's a good idea.
Micah, in the continuous improvement plan, there are some metrics in there, especially in the elementary school. And we have consistently been below average with the average state test scores. You look at the average state test scores for K-6, Notice school district is consistently below that average point year after year after year. And this, for me, has I think is a worthy goal for a continuous improvement plan to at least hit that middle mark. I do.
I think, I looked into my former boss for this, but I think it has to do with like the kids we have and I cannot think of the proper term for it right now, but demographics. Yeah, depending on what kids we have in the district. It's, we try every time.
Oh,
to do
no,
that.
I'm not saying that
Every time.
good people aren't giving everything they have to try and improve this. That's not what I'm saying. Every district is dealing with demographics, with income issues, with all of that. Okay, so Notice is not unique, but Notice should be at least average. And for me, I don't think there's an excuse that's good enough to say, no, that's a worthy goal. We should have that as a worthy goal. Now, whether we achieve it or not, okay. But a continuous improvement plan should set a worthy goal, not a goal that's so easy to achieve that it's almost like checking a box. It needs to be a stretch. And for me, that would be a proper stretch goal.
Yeah, and I applaud that. I think even, again, looking at the state average in many of these metrics is 50%, right? And if it's 50% of the kids are at grade level in reading, that means 50% of the kids aren't. And I think that there's a lot of work still to be done in all school settings. I can't speak specifically to Notice because I haven't engaged in these conversations in our district yet around monitoring growth for individual students and being able to show the growth that students are making. So they might still be below average, but if they showed a 20-point jump, that's a win.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think some of it is looking at the way that the metrics currently are collected by the state are these overarching, easy to pull metrics based on our high stakes testing. They may not be true indicators of the actual work that our teachers are doing on high quality instruction and or our students in engaging in their learning.
That's my general comment regarding the elementary school. My general comment on the continuous improvement plan regarding the high school is that the goals that were set 2 years ago and rolled into last year aren't high enough. These goals for the high school are very easy to achieve, that all seniors will complete a common app before the end of the first semester. But that's too easy to achieve. There are standardized tests being given at the high school level as well and junior high level. And those are also being reported. And we can compare ourselves again at a state level for our junior high and high school kids in this continuous improvement plan to set a real authentic goal that's actually meaningful that way.
So this is what I think, and we can look back to what we just discussed about the framework for the district strategic plan. This will, those goals or objectives that we set out will obviously include them.
Yes, they'll fold under that strategic plan, but my point here is the goals we have set at the high school level for the continuous improvement plan are lightweight goals. I want heavyweight, hard to achieve, we really did it, celebrate goals. Not these little frosting lightweight goals that I've been
Right,
seeing.
I'm thinking about the work that we will do with the district strategic plan, and I think that comes under.
Yeah, it'll fold under there.
Yeah, and so you're right. You're right, but I think we'll get to there.
Yep.
When we start doing the districts.
You asked for comment about the continuous improvement, so
No,
that's a comment.
And I believe, Dave, what you're highlighting is, and trustee Sorrell, Nikki, that you're both right in the sense that by and large, in districts across the state, I'm fairly certain, like some of those metrics have just been checkoff points.
In order to satisfy the State Department of Ed,
Satisfy
but
the
not
state board.
really measure here.
The state board has put forward increased pressure on K-3 literacy and 5-9 math. And so those will likely be the areas that we focus on. However, yes, it's important for us to look at what are the additional metrics around college and career readiness, around how many students are meeting the 4-year graduation cohort, 5-year graduation cohort. What are they doing from a longevity standpoint 2 years down the road? Are they gainfully employed? Or are they in a 2-year or 4-year institution or trade school? That's work that has not been done because it has not fallen under the scope of just meeting the minimum metric.
Yes,
Right?
points made.
One last thing I wanted to say about this, and we know what kind of teacher I am, and we also have to think about reality. I see it every day, but in reality, any growth for me is good growth, even if it's 2 points, that's growth. And that's what I expect from my students.
There's definitely a balance between setting lofty goals and using data to beat teachers' morale, right? As teachers can attest, they get beat with standardized scores all the time. That we're not doing enough, that we're not doing enough, we're not doing enough. I think we need to change the conversation to find ways to celebrate the impact we're having and how we're having it. And I think it takes a look at a different set of data and from a different perspective than just the standard run-of-the-mill required plan that gets submitted to the state board. The next board committee is safety. I know that this has been a point of discussion multiple times in your board meetings, particularly around lockdown drills and active shooter drills. As I've tried to articulate, there is a portion of the work around safety that is exempt from public record. So again, just want to highlight this. John, I've got you listed as unless anybody else is going to wrestle you off of that, right? I know specifically that there is a desire from the board to ensure that we're documenting training efforts, right? And so, specifically around, Dave, you used the term active shooter drills, right? And I think that there is a need for conversation around active shooter response, but there is a broader scope of emergency planning that needs to happen as well. That there are lockdowns happen for a number of reasons, not just active shooters. Yes, they need to be, staff needs to be trained effectively and respond appropriately. And so, particularly given kind of the current national climate around school safety, I will be serving on this committee. And I just, is there anything beyond just ensuring that we have an emergency plan in place and that we're practicing and drilling on those plans? Are there any other directives that the board would like this committee to investigate? Dave?
We have in our possession a plan that was generated in November. I would like that plan to be studied, referenced, audited, checked through, and if it needs to happen in executive session, so be it. And then I'd like to have that same plan done again with this district in an appropriate time interval to ensure that we are making real and significant progress and not just paying lip service to this safety.
What I would recommend in regards to that is that it's an internal audit. That plan is a triennial plan done by the state board, not board, Office of Building School Safety.
Yeah.
Right.
Whatever that appropriate interval is, but pay attention to that document.
I think we need to have some kind of bus drill safety, something, because like I can remember an incident where the bus had to stop down and check. So, whatever that is.
Yeah, bus evacuation is a required drill that we have to conduct twice a year. Again, by statute, fire drills are required monthly. There is no statutory requirement for any other drills around emergency planning. So we can have this conversation within the committee work, but I think it's important for the board to recognize and understand there's an importance that we know it, that we practice it, but that we also don't traumatize or re-traumatize community members in the process.
Yep.
A significant amount of drills can be done through tabletop design rather than active drill. And so engaging in, for a prime example of that, and or a micro drill. So for example, at a school nurse once, she used to love to throw these random drills at our front office secretary. She talked one of the teachers into faking like he was having a heart attack in the front office, just to see how they would respond, right? And we went through the protocol and the drill, and then this is a drill, you do not need to call that. But engaging in that level of conversation, because if you look at our safety plan actually involves over 15 to 18 scenarios, right? They include things that likely we don't have to deal with, like tornado, right? Or,
Tsunami.
Toxic chemical spill, right? But with the train tracks being right where it is, right? We need to know, and we need to make sure that we have those. And so there's a lot of work to be done in that level that is beyond the scope of what Ms. Miller needs to know what to do in a lockdown, right? Again, I think that historically we can get very kind of single focused on fire drill, lockdown, active shooter. But it is important. Again, as has been stated, Notice was the site of a school shooting. Fortunately, there was no personal injury during that. At the conference last week, the superintendent and team from the Jefferson Joint School District in Rigby, Idaho presented on lessons that they learned from their school shooting in May of 2020 where a sixth grade female student wounded two students and a staff member with a firearm. And they shared their lessons that they learned. I've engaged in conversations with, I sat through that presentation with school administrators from Parma because I responded to their facility last year when they had their possible gunshots on campus last year. I've already engaged in conversations with the superintendent there to utilize Parma facility if we need to for a reunification process. There's no place in Noda's big enough if we have an incident here that we can properly reunify students with families because we don't have a facility big enough to manage that. So a lot of work to come in this.
Great.
And a lot of people that need to be involved.
Correct. County crisis management planning, law enforcement, first responders,
National Guard, you,
Yep. FEMA.
Yep.
Um,
not a problem. I've already
Dealt with it.
That's
Okay.
fine.
And then lastly is the building maintenance and grounds. Matt, is this you still?
Yes.
Board directive. What we want to create a prioritized list for plant facilities funding. It's been named multiple times, right?
I believe also a check-off list of items that have been brought forth by outside agencies of things that need to be repaired, removed, whatever.
You're speaking specifically to the facility report.
I believe so.
Say that again.
Priority.
Well, I think, Micah, from standpoint, Dave showed that facility, long-range facility plan, the assets to it, to keep it up every year.
Right.
Is a high priority too. And I have, if you guys don't have, this that the USB you can use to upgrade that, but every time projects are done, they need to be shown that they were increased so that the score of that facility jumps up.
Previous discussion has revolved around that report regarding insurance. Is that something that the board would like to task that committee with reviewing?
That is on my list is property insurance values. Were determined by Northwest Valuations on February 14th. And I'd like this board to be given some assurance or proof or copies of insurance certificates to show that the insured value of our buildings matches that valuation report or exceeds that valuation report. It's just too important. If we lose one of these buildings and need to replace it, we're going to have to rely 100% on these insurance payouts. And if they're not correct, we're in a world of hurt. And it's too important. That's got to be on that. I also want to comment regarding this 10-year facility plan. When you talk about expanding the cafeteria, Rich went to a lot of work for us in generating this plan to show what happens if we grow at 5%, at 6%, at 8%, at 10%. And maybe it's the cafeteria, but maybe it's a new classroom that, portable classroom that needs to be set before the cafeteria, or maybe they happen at the same time. We have these scenarios drawn up. We just need to reference them and use them when we look at whatever building projects we're going to consider out here. This is a living and accurate document that should be referenced.
And on that note, likely probably the first issue we will have to tackle on that committee is the roof on this facility.
On the junior high.
On the junior high, it being roughly 2 years or less left of, as has been communicated to me.
Yeah, it's on borrowed time, but I don't think it's leaking now that I know of, but any day.
It's been red this week.
No, it's
Not
not
yet.
red tag.
Do you have a computer?
I do. Okay, I'm done.
Others. I don't, you don't need action on that, do you?
Yeah, we probably
Okay.
should. Action to approve the board
Okay.
committee guidelines as compiled.
Okay. All right. Do I hear a motion to accept the,
Board committee guidelines and
yep,
procedures.
that's it,
So moved.
As discussed.
Second, yes.
So that means adding the things that we talked about.
Yes, I edited those as we were talking.
So that,
okay, so I've got a first and a second, is there any discussion? If not, all in favor? Opposed? Okay, Micah, do we need to do anything on the framework for the district's strategic plan?
Not unless the board would like to articulate the standards in which they would like to be the focus to move forward. If the discussion is we need to have more discussion, then there's no need to take action on that.
I think we need more time on that. Because I would like to look at some examples.
Sure, I can send some examples for review.
Yeah, I'm looking at Middleton at the moment, but
Caldwell's is a good one to look at. Parma's has a lot of good qualities in there as well.
Okay.
It's just coming back. The next item on the agenda, can I move this forward?
Yes.
Is consideration of student handbooks. I failed to upload the secondary handbook, so it is now there. So apologize for not having a chance to review that ahead of time, but it has now been uploaded and can be pulled up if needed. Trustee Davis?
Other than changing the school year from 21-22 to 22-23, what I want to know is what is different from last year? Which parts deviate, if any, from the approved board policy? There's nothing highlighted in here to show me what changes were made. It makes it very difficult for me as a board member to compare the two documents. So it comes down to a question like that.
Very, very little as substantive changes have taken place in the elementary handbook. It's purely just kind of updating contact information and making sure that it just kind of aligns with personnel for the coming year. The high school book that I have just uploaded, and again, I apologize for not getting that in there, has been marked in legislative format that does show some changes. It does not deviate from board policy. However, there are certain functions within the handbook for a sense of space and time in what's presented to the kids in this format that we have changed to refer to board policy rather than just repeat board policy.
I want to make a general comment here. We've had trouble in the past with handbooks when they're at odds with or not consistent with. So be careful there, and it's hard for me as a board member to ferret those out in this way, but just a caution there, please.
I just checked a link, and it's on the page that the parent signs and the student signs. That link doesn't work
Secondary?
on, no, this is what's the page of the elementary signs, I think, elementary. Because, so much work was done on our website,
This page is moved. Yep, I can remedy that.
that no longer it works, so.
Yeah, I did send it.
Yeah, handbooks are a very tedious task
They are.
because they
Yeah.
have to be updated annually with a lot of information. It should be noted at this point, given kind of the current status of negotiations, that the staff handbook is yet to be drafted as well. And so expect a staff handbook coming forward. But this student handbook for the elementary and secondary school typically should come to the board in April for the following school year. And so we're just a little bit behind the eight ball on making sure that we get these out to clearly articulate to families. This also does not, our handbooks currently do not meet our obligation as a district on some of our policies that we are required to share with our community. And so I'll be working with the team to make sure that we have a way to clearly communicate some of those additional policies that are not covered within the student handbooks.
So are we why can't we just hold this over to another meeting, or does it have to be done before school starts?
You may, if you choose, kids show up on Monday.
Yeah.
So at this point, you could argue that we don't have a handbook. You could also argue that last year's handbook is still valid.
Did you order like the little spiral books and everything already?
May I respond to that?
You may.
So the student handbooks, we had to condense it down to 6 pages. So I created a QR code that will hit the live document. So the live document will be on our website. Copy that's uploaded to the board docs, it shows the revisions, the strikeouts in the red. And like on 3380, I knew the board policy was still working on that. So I just put refer to policy 3380. So I did, it was 46 pages and I think it's down to,
It's still long.
yeah, but
40.
yeah. Well, that's with strikeouts. I think it's
It'll be
down to
closer.
29
Yeah.
pages on my final copy. And then the 6 pages for the student planner. So student planner has the hot ticket items, dress code, cell phone policy, things like that. So it's the same language, it's condensed, and it has a QR code that goes to.
Well, I'm not showing,
Oh, maybe
what I'm
refresh.
looking at is the copy of,
That's the one with the
You have to go to
revisions.
board docs
If you
online.
refresh
It's
in your,
that's where I'm at.
Refresh it.
Oh.
Hit the refresh button.
I'm like,
so my recommendation would be to approve them as presented. If the board would choose to hold them over for further review, that is within your right as well. Again, handbook does not supersede board policy, so board policy does dictate. So if there is a conflict, it's never fun, and we will deal with that, and then we will revert back to what policy is, stand on policy. If that situation were to arise during the review process.
I think it's a little cleaner, professional for the parents and kids to have 22, 23 as they come in rather than an old one.
Madam Chair.
John?
I move that we approve the student handbooks for school year 2023.
I second that.
Dave, is that you?
Yes, I second
Thank
that.
Okay. All right, so moved and seconded. Do I hear any discussion?
I have not seen this third copy of the revisions. It's simply reading. Yeah. So it wasn't on there when I looked at it. I mean, even when I brought it up at the beginning of this meeting.
Correct.
So how can I, I hate to vote on it, but I know it just makes it difficult.
No, I understand that, and again, it's, that was an oversight on my part in not getting that file uploaded. It was given to me last week. As I was making a lot of changes to documents, that one got missed. I
But
thought-
knowing, Nikki, that you did last year and there are minimal changes, that can reassure you that you're pretty much there.
There is no additional language except for some wordsmithing, and then I condensed some of the language that just said referring policy, and that reassures you. Yep.
Most of the changes in the secondary handbook revolve around the implementation of our PBIS program, and formatting and referring to new guidelines regarding McKinney Vento and foster child.
Okay, I have a first and a second on approving the student handbook as presented. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Consider adoption of Idaho Special Education Manual.
Madam Chair. Federal regulation requires through Idaho State Department of Education that each district adopt the current special education manual. In this case, this is a manual that was amended in 2018. Historical practice with CASA school districts has been that the CASA board adopts the special education manual. And it has been brought to our attention that that does not suffice and meet the expectations of the Idaho plan for IDEA. And so it is just, we need to publicly state that we adopt the special education manual for 2018. We will take a copy of these minutes and send them to CASA for records for any audits that come in for the State Department of Education. Dave?
Is this manual identical to the one at CASA then?
Yes, this is the state manual.
With no additional edits or appendices or anything? This is it?
That's it.
Check the box.
Madam Chair, I move that we adopt the Idaho Special Education Manual. 2018.
Second level. Okay, it's been moved and seconded to adopt the special ed manual from 2018. Any discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. Consider approval of elementary walk path.
Madam Chair,
Dave?
I make a motion to approve up to the amount of $20,000 the construction of a walking path in the elementary playground.
Okay, do I have a second?
Because in the,
It's 19 and change.
it's 19 and change here. The market is so volatile, and there will be a change order or two that'll come apart about something. They're gonna hit an irrigation line or something. I want to have some flexibility in this motion so that, you know, there's a $500 problem, they can just work right past it. And not say, oh, we're only approved for $19,012, locked down tight. I don't want to do that to them.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Now Jenkins.
Okay. Consider approval of paving path to Wakefield.
Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
I make a motion to approve the Waits pathway as outlined in the superintendent's report up to a level of $10,000.
I will second.
I'll second that.
We have 3 seconds?
I will second
I
that.
have a hunch this one's gonna pass.
Okay.
It's
Who do you want me to put forward as second?
Nikki.
Nikki.
Okay.
All right, discussion? No? All in favor?
Aye.
Passed.
I've been asking that for a long time.
I don't say I all opposed. I guess. Okay, first reading of ISBA policy update.
Madam Chair, as has been previously indicated, there are a significant number of policies that the ISBA has submitted for review. Through this process, I wanted to bring them all for first read, recognizing and understanding that there's a lot to read through. It is the intention for us upon approval of the first read, during the second read, to actually work to provide substantive change to the notice policy and reflection to it, with recommendations and working with school staff in regards to some of those. Dave, I'll get to your question in a minute. I want to highlight a couple of policies just to kind of keep, just keep us going. And then the intent then would be to then do a third read on these policies. So there's no rush on these policies. We just need to be working and thinking forward. One policy we've already handled, we don't have to handle, is policy 1420, that's the trustee expense. I want to highlight the curricular materials. There have been changes regarding state legislature around public engagement and community community involvement in the adoption of curricular materials. And so that'll be something that'll be very important for the board. That is policy 2520, 2540 as well. Another significant change at the state level that may or may not impact notice is a change to the high school graduation requirements at the state level. So the state legislature has removed the expectation for math in the senior year. So historically, the high school graduation requirement has been 6 credits of math, 2 of which had to happen in their senior year. And so mostly what that means is that our students take 8 credits worth of math. Notice policy actually does require 8 credits worth of math. There's a lot of strong feelings amongst the teachers around keeping 8 credits worth of math. And so there'll be a lot of discussion around those graduation requirements. Specific to notice as well, this will bring up a discussion around the requirement in the notice policy around the word processing requirement as a high school graduation requirement. Additionally, there is some discussion around the implementation of a requirement for financial literacy, likely not to be handled in this policy revision, but coming down the pike through economics curriculum is the most likely placement for that. And there's a lot of hotly debated discussion around requiring a computer science class of all high school graduates. The superintendent's meeting last week, there was a big discussion around that because I believe there are only 16 computer science teachers in the entire state of Idaho. And so there's a lot of discussion as to what does that mean if you require computer science, what meets the computer science requirement. So if you talk to Patty Peterson about policy 2700, she has feelings about math.
So, but you said it's going from 8 to 6?
The state no longer requires it. Board policy can maintain our current policy expectation that students take 8 credits of math.
Because if they go to CASA, then they still have to have the CASA math 2 years.
There is the option. The CASA CTE programs do allow for math requirements to be met through CASA and not through Notice Math program.
I know there was an issue.
Historically, I believe that there was some discussion as to whether or not that counted. It does meet the notice policy requirement. So if a student is a junior or a senior and they are enrolled in a CTE program, all CTE programs at CASA have a math component. They can earn their math credit through CASA. Some of these policies are like revocations and deletions. An example of that is 5480 leadership premiums. Those are no longer funded at the state level, so the recommendation of ISBA is to remove those. I know this has been a discussion in negotiations, and so it'll likely become a discussion from a board policy perspective as well. Extracurricular transportation, specific to the notice issue around and the legal advice around carpooling, promoting carpooling for extracurricular transit. There's revised policy recommendation on how not to get sued with that. So, and then the last one that I just want to kind of highlight before I take questions on these is policy 2470, self-directed learners. It's in the last memo, the next to last page. This last session, the legislature passed a bill that allowed, that gave students the substantive right to be declared self-directed learner, which means that they can request to be treated as a self-directed learner and do what they want.
As long as they pass the class.
As long as they whatever. If we don't have a whatever in place, it could become a potential issue. And so there's some policy guidance around creating a plan for how does a student qualify as a self-directed learner, what are the conditions, of maintaining that status. It does allow for unique opportunities around mastery-based learning. It does provide opportunities for off-campus workplace internships, and that those students would still be counted as enrolled and present in school during that time. So there are some benefits to it. As was relayed to us at the meetings last week, the full intent was for the senator's granddaughter to be able to go to recess whenever she wanted to because she was done with her work. Well, they passed it, and it has far more reaching ramifications around everything else. It's a topic of discussion that we will be putting together a team to look specifically about how can we use this for our advantage with our work with the Mastery Network that's been done at the elementary school, and also maintain some semblance of accountability for students on their academics, but also provide them some community-based internship opportunities and some other things if they're meeting a minimum standard. So without getting too far into the weeds at 9:30 at 9:15 at night, questions, comments
I have
about
one real
policies.
Are these in our policies that are under board docs?
Some of them in board docs, yes.
Yes.
The specific policies are listed in board docs for tonight's meeting.
There's a whole
Yeah.
pile
Yep.
of
So they're in there where I can look them up under the policies rather than looking them up here, because that's. So they're out there.
What I will do is I will take the PDFs and I will create a single PDF of all of those so that you can use a searchable function and just go through from start to finish. Or I could just send them all to you in an email.
No, thank you.
Trustee Davies?
Yes, several things. First of all, regarding leadership premiums, the recommendation is to just put it blank in there, just to take it out. But in fact, our approved budget has $15,000 set aside for learning premiums for this next year. So we obviously can't have a blank policy for leadership premiums. We have to retain something for leadership premiums if we in fact have an approved budget that has $15,000 for leadership premiums.
Yes, yes, the budget does include dollars for that in the anticipation that it was likely going to be a discussion topic through negotiations.
Yeah.
So as this policy goes away, if it's negotiated as part of the master agreement, I would encourage both the negotiations team and the board, as we review and discuss, and even from the budgeting labeling, to not use the word premium. These are not leadership premiums funded by the state. These are
Stipends.
leadership stipends
Yep.
offered by the district.
Fair enough. All right, second point is, when I open up, you mentioned these memos, these letters that they give us. So if I open up memo to members spring 2022, if you could do that for me, Jen, it's down a ways. Right there, that one, right there. It says, it's talking about fall 21 and winter 22 policy update. Right, they look backwards and they say, remember, we gave you this update. And so I look down and I read what was in that update, and what you'll find is a list down a little further that says, right here, these are the policies that were part of that previous update. So I pulled 3 or 4 of these to look at them in our live policy manual online. These haven't been updated either.
Some have, some have not, correct?
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of them last revised in 2009. So what that tells me is this was kind of hit and miss even one cycle back further. That there are still policies out there that ISBA tried to give to us that we didn't update, and we should have. Those policies right there.
Over the course of this school year, again, there's certain policies that we have to review as a board annually. There are certain policies that we have to ensure that we've communicated to our constituents. It is a necessary component currently to do a complete revision or a complete review of our entire policy manual.
Thank you.
So buckle up for
Thank you.
for some late night reading.
Thank you.
What we will likely do is take them by section, just for review. It does not necessarily mean that they're open for revision. If there are questions that come up during the review period, what I would like to do is say, for example, if we wanted to review section 1000 for the September board meeting, that is policies governing the board, right? If we know that now, that in September, you're going to review those in open meeting, if you have questions around those policies, or would like to see comparative policy from ISBA to see what their current recommendations are, then we can bring that. Other than that, it's just a matter of ensuring that we go through them as a board and review them so that you know what they are, that we know what they say and what they make sense. For an example, in our work in student handbook revisions, the attendance policy that's currently adopted by the Noda School District, I do not believe is in line with the philosophy of the Noda School Board or the Noda School Administration. The ISBA attendance policy option, they give districts 4 or 5 options to choose from in revision and review. And so that is likely one that as a school team, we will be convening a team to make a recommendation for not just review, but for revision. And so but by June 30th of next year, I would like to review every policy in our board manual. Yes, sir.
One last, in that same letter that I had you open up, could you open it up one more time? Yeah, and go to the top of this letter if you would, please. I want to bring the board's attention to policy 1610. You didn't mention that. And this is important for Matt. And Matt knows I was going to bring this up. Policy 1610. And this is just a little summary telling us what's changed in the policy. It's not the policy itself. Change clarifies that while there's an exception to the prohibition on district school contracts a board member has a pecuniary interest in, this exception allows contracts when the interest is remote. This exception does not allow a board member to be employed by the school district. So in other words, this policy is being recommended to tighten this up. Matt still does work as a vendor from time to time for the district, and so I've just drawn this to his attention. I draw it to the attention of the board to make sure that we're still in a safe zone there with regard to what's called a pecuniary interest with a board member as a trustee. I just wanted to bring that to your attention. Thank you.
Can I bring something else to somebody's attention?
Sure.
When I go to District Home on Noda School District, right at that very first page, down the right side, the second thing right after COVID information says NSD policy manual. You click on that link, and it says this page has moved.
No, it doesn't. At least, well, the one I just clicked did not.
Mine doesn't.
Mine does.
I'm looking for, there's that, link is broken.
I'm looking for, okay,
So if you
if I
go
go to
down-
district homepage,
I just hit that
I'm
District
looking
Home
for
up there.
COVID information and
Right
NSD
there.
policy
You
manual.
click on that. Oh, ours is broken, it just broke.
But I would recommend clearing your cache in your history in your computer and trying to refresh it. And we can still continue to take a look at it.
I'm just wondering about everybody else. Joe Schmo trying to find a policy.
What is it? What is the site? Oh, yeah, mine clearly goes to the policy manual.
Mine clearly doesn't.
So-
I just wanted to offer something. I know that you're talking about the policies and everything, and when I was here a couple of years ago, I went through every policy that the school had, and I went back through all of the meeting minutes and the approved meeting minutes back to when we first adopted the policies in 2009, I believe. And I have a spreadsheet, and it's each page is the 1000s, the 2000s, and I went through and on each one of the policies, I wrote down or I typed in the dates of when they were, first adopted, when they were revised, and when they were updated, all that information, so that might be a starting point for you guys. It's a lot of information.
Jen just told me that should be on the flash drive that Donita now has access to. So if we can't find it, I will ask you. Do you still have a copy of it?
I believe I do.
So I got some good news and bad news about policy manuals. When I started in Middleton, the good news is you guys got fairly modern. The Middleton policy manual is 15 years old. That was the bad news. The good news was 18 months later, we went through every policy and made a new policy manual. The last piece of bad news was the guy that replaced me got the board to delete it. His first meeting, he was there after spending 18 months. So there, it disappeared.
Strategic planning matters.
Yes, it does.
Okay,
Yes.
so now we need to go through all of these.
We just need to approve these to move forward to second reading.
Madam Chair,
John,
I move that we move the ISBA policy updates to a second reading.
I second that motion.
any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so did you say that you want us to do the 1,000s for September? Is that what I heard you say?
I think with this bulk of other policy revisions right now, I hesitate to add another 40 policies to your plate. to
Yeah,
review.
no kidding.
Thank you.
Let's get these
Please
first.
consider it, ma'am.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, so we don't need that, do we?
We've got K still.
Oh, hey, consider authorizing signatures on bank accounts.
Madam Chair. So as indicated in board docs, just to bring the bank accounts current with current signatories, we need board authorization of minutes to take to the credit union.
Okay.
Yeah, in order to add the highlighted people listed there as signatories on bank accounts. Our intent, just so that I want to articulate around the high school bank account and the elementary bank account, this goes to a broader historical discussion around how do we know what is in student funds and student accounts. We will be working with Donita to bring those under her umbrella as the district business manager, so that we can clearly articulate what funds are in which student account, because we are responsible for them in that sense. Also want to ensure that on those accounts that they do require two signatures. And so that's why Jen and I will both be signatories on the school building accounts, is in case one of us is gone, that we can still get checks cut if we need to in a short turnaround. So, Trustee Davis.
The previous business manager, we asked him to quarterly, 4 times a year, update this board with those student accounts. Doesn't have to be every month, quarterly. And it did get done once or twice. And I appreciate your comments about us needing to be responsible for them. And I would renew my request. I don't know if my fellow trustees feel this way or not.
Our goal will be hopefully by October that we will have those built into our budget report that you get every month. That includes every fund, budgeted balance, month to date, year to date.
Yeah, the ins and outs in those student accounts, the dollar amount is small, but the emotional content is large.
Ma'am, so I see Matthew Campbell on the district bank account, but not the high school or the elementary.
The high school and the elementary accounts are building level accounts, so none of the board members are signatories on those accounts.
I was just wondering why.
Okay, so then after we approve this and you do your documentation you have to do, then we take that to Cap Ed and we do the removals and the additions. Is that correct?
Which removals?
At this point, we're not authorizing any removals.
Not even John? Not you?
Salloway, I know who you're talking
Salloway,
about.
Um,
he's still on there.
well, that's a good point. I don't know who's on there that needs removed. So,
Madam Chair,
Yes,
I move that we authorize signatories on these bank accounts and also authorize the approval of any removals that possibly need to be done.
Bing, bang, boom. I second that motion.
okay. It's been moved and seconded to approve authorizing signatures on bank accounts and to remove any signatures that need to be at the time.
I'd like to discuss that motion.
Okay, I was just gonna ask.
Yeah, thank you. Would it be an oversimplification to say if there's anybody on these signature cards other than Donita, the two of you, or the five of us, that would be a signature that needs to be removed? That would be 8 people. Is there anybody that I'm not considering outside of those 8 people?
on the district account, no.
District, high school, elementary, did I cover? I think,
Again, board members are not signatories on the.
I understand that,
accounts.
yeah.
So from a district account, yes, it would be, you 5 members, your board treasurer, which is Donita, and then school administrators. And the reason,
Yep.
actually, it does not even include Jen, at the district level, it's just me.
right, I understand that at the district level. At the building level, it would be the 2 of you.
It's the 2 of us, Donita, and then,
Anybody else who's signatory on that?
they're currently, the building secretaries are signatories on those accounts.
Oh, so the 2 building secretaries are also signatories at the building level.
Historically, they were kind of the prime account managers for
Yeah,
these
okay, that's fine.
activity funds.
So ultimately, there's roughly 10 people in these 3 different accounts that would show up on these cards. Anybody else would fall under what John just said.
Correct.
I just wanted to clarify that. Thanks. Yeah, appreciate that.
You have to work with emphasis to treasure.
What?
Secretaries or those approved.
Previously.
Yeah.
I would have to dig into minutes at this point.
It's typical for them to be able to sign.
Yeah, then go, mentioned.
We are too.
Just wanted to clarify that.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
item 9A, executive session, was
We're not
listed.
done yet.
We
We haven't
Oh,
voted
sorry.
yet on that.
Yeah, I think we need to vote on that.
I get tired.
Free.
Okay, so it was first and seconded and discussed, yeah, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that is passed. Before we adjourn, just a reminder that the events committee is putting on a free ice cream social tomorrow evening, 7 to 8:30 at the church yard there in back of the church where all the nice grass is. There will be some outdoor games that kids can play. Kids can be great big like that or little bitty, whatever. But we'd really like for you all to come out and that's
Yeah, I just want to make sure that we articulate that the reason the executive session was put on was specifically if the board desired to speak with me about superintendent goals at this meeting. My indication at this point is that that's not wanted at this time, but we can carry it over until next month to have that conversation.
okay. So that would be board request of district administration.
So, Madam Chair,
Yes.
on board requests of district administration, in addition to the work around the policies, I have listed a review of the stipend consideration for treasurer and job description of business manager review as part of the classified salary analysis. At this point, I think the other requests of administration fall under everything that's been previously handled through board action tonight, unless there's anything other outstanding that the board would like me to bring to the September board meeting.
lot less to happen.
Try.
Yeah.
Trying to
We're
catch
gonna
up.
be busy for a little while. Okay. We don't need to do that. Okay, your unscheduled board members, future items.
Madam Chair.
Ms. Dave?
Previously, we had approved a motion this board had for bus driver rates up to $25 an hour. I see that we're still looking for 2 bus drivers. And I'm wondering, has that been communicated to these possible future employees that we're willing to pay up to that level? I guess
think they are, but
I don't know. I think they talked to you about it. Right? I think that part of it is that we have to do an analysis with our current drivers and what their daily rate is. And Dunning and I are just barely getting to a point where we're able to identify what the hourly rate of most of our classified employees are. So we want to make sure that in that process, that if we're offering a brand new bus driver $20 an hour, none of our drivers are making $20 an hour. And so if we do that, we will need to shift and make whole our current employees through that process as well. So it's definitely something that I intend to include in the analysis of the classified employees to bring to the September.
The September board meeting. Thank you very much. And finally, when John Baldazzo came onto the board, there was a question of his wife being an employee of the school district. There's an Idaho Code 33507 which addresses this, and it requires 2 things. One of the things it requires is that her position be open up for 60 days, once a year, before the beginning of the school year. In order to comply with this law, you have to continue to remain, or her to remain in that capacity and do so in a way that isn't a conflict of interest.
Madam Chair, in response to that, Dave, just to fill you in, and I'm not sure as to kind of what happened prior to me taking the position as to whether or not we received a formal resignation from her in that process. The position was open, and it has been filled with the different staff members. So she no longer is serving as the child nutrition director. So at this point, that's a moot issue.
She's no longer the child, is she still an employee of the school
She
district?
is still an employee of the district, but she is not serving in the administrative capacity.
Yeah. This law says, number one, she can't be in an administrative capacity, so that checkbox, but she is an employee of the school district. And as a result, Idaho law requires that her job, this is 33507, that her position has been listed and opened up once a year, and it says before the school year starts. So I want to bring that to your attention so that we don't get sideways with what is an annual event that'll need to happen while John serves on the school board. So that would be like future items, just to make sure that we're compliant with 33507.
I will review that and bring a comment back.
Perfect, thank you.
If I may, Madam Chair,
yes, John?
just so you're aware, Mr. Davies and Mike, according to the Attorney General who responded to a question I had before I came onto the board, the administrative position is only if it's a certificated position, so that was a moot point from the very beginning. And it's just a her job position.
I can request advice of council on
Yeah.
behalf of the district and get official recommendation from.
Yeah, it'd be best just to keep everything, clean and proper.
Okay, so that takes any other future items from the board? If not,
Madam Chair,
John?
I move that we adjourn.
Don't leave, please. Any discussion? You can't leave yet. That's my discussion. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Sign checks.
Okay, Pat, yes, we've got checks to sign.
Thanks for going with us.
The distance tonight.
Thanks for seconding that.